As we delve deeper into the annals of ancient history, let's turn our attention to the world of Roman gladiators. These warriors of the arena have captivated our imaginations for centuries, but the reality of their lives was far more complex than popular culture might have us believe. Contrary to common misconception, not all gladiators were slaves forced into combat. Many were actually volunteers who chose this dangerous profession willingly. These individuals, known as auctorati, signed contracts that essentially indentured them to gladiator school or ludus for a specified period. What could possibly motivate someone to voluntarily become a gladiator, you might wonder? Well, the allure of fame and fortune played a significant role. Successful gladiators could achieve celebrity status in Roman society, becoming household names and attracting adoring fans. Some even became the subjects of graffiti and artwork, much like modern-day sports stars. The financial rewards could be substantial as well. Victorious gladiators often received monetary prizes, and the most skilled among them could amass considerable wealth over time. Some were even able to buy their freedom and retire comfortably after a successful career in the arena. However, it's crucial to understand that this path to glory was fraught with peril. The life expectancy of a gladiator was notoriously short, with many perishing in their first few matches. The training was brutal and unforgiving, designed to forge these men into living weapons capable of captivating audiences with their martial prowess. Interestingly, despite the violent nature of their profession, gladiators were not expected to fight to the death in every match. Contrary to popular belief, most gladiatorial combats were not intended to be fatal. The death of a trained gladiator represented a significant financial loss for their owner or school, so matches were often fought to first blood or until one combatant admitted defeat. That being said, the threat of death was ever present. If a gladiator performed poorly or showed cowardice, the crowd could call for their execution. The final decision often rested with the editor of the games, usually a high-ranking official or even the emperor himself, who would signal whether the defeated gladiator should be spared or slain. For those who did survive and excel, the rewards could be extraordinary. Some gladiators achieved such fame that they became instructors at gladiatorial schools, passing on their skills to the next generation of arena combatants. Others leveraged their celebrity status to gain political influence or secure lucrative business opportunities upon retirement. As we ponder the lives of these ancient warriors, we're reminded of the complex interplay between glory and mortality, fame and danger, that define the world of the Roman gladiator. Their story serves as a fascinating chapter in the long and often brutal history of human entertainment and spectacle. As we conclude our exploration of the life of a Roman gladiator, it's clear that their existence was far from the glamorous spectacle often portrayed in modern media. The harsh reality of their daily lives, coupled with the constant threat of death, paints a sobering picture of this ancient profession. Gladiators faced numerous challenges beyond the arena. Their diet, while protein-rich, was strictly controlled and often monotonous. The constant physical training and potential for injury meant that even outside of combat, their bodies were under immense stress. The psychological toll of knowing that each day could be their last was undoubtedly immense. Moreover, the social stigma attached to gladiators was a heavy burden to bear. Despite their popularity among the masses, they were still considered lower class, often equated with slaves and criminals. This societal position limited their opportunities for advancement and integration into Roman society at large. It's worth noting that while some gladiators did achieve fame and fortune, these were the exceptions rather than the rule. For every Priscus or Varus who gained renown, countless others met anonymous ends in the blood-soaked sands of the arena. The gladiatorial games themselves were a complex reflection of Roman society. They served as a means of political control, religious observance, and public entertainment. However, they also represented the darker aspects of Roman culture, its fascination with violence, and its casual disregard for human life. In retrospect, the life of a gladiator was one of extreme contrasts. They were both celebrated and reviled, admired for their strength yet considered expendable. Their lives were a constant balance between the potential for glory and the ever-present shadow of death. As we drift off to sleep, let's reflect on how fortunate we are to live in an age where such brutal spectacles are no longer considered entertainment. The gladiator's legacy serves as a stark reminder of how far human society has progressed in valuing individual life and dignity. As we conclude our exploration of the Aztec warriors' rigorous lifestyle, let's shift our focus to another fascinating aspect of ancient civilization. Our next topic delves into the intricacies of daily life in ancient Egypt, a world vastly different from our own. From the scorching heat of the desert to the complex social hierarchy, we'll uncover why surviving in this ancient society was no simple task. As we delve into the life of a Victorian factory worker, prepare yourself for a journey back to the industrial heartland of 19th century England. Picture the smoke-filled skis, the clanging of machinery, and the relentless pace of progress. The Victorian era was a time of great change, but for the average factory worker, it was a period marked by grueling labor and harsh conditions. From dawn till dusk, men, women, and even children toiled in cramped, dangerous environments, their lives dictated by the rhythms of steam-powered machines and the demands of ruthless factory owners. As we delve deeper into the annals of history, we encounter yet another period that might make you grateful for modern labor laws. Let's explore the grim reality of factory working conditions during the Industrial Revolution, a time when the pursuit of progress often came at a steep human cost. In the late 18th and early 19th centuries, as factories began to dominate the landscape of burgeoning industrial cities, workers faced a multitude of hazards and hardships. The typical workday was excruciatingly long, often stretching from dawn to dusk. It wasn't uncommon for laborers to toil for 14 to 16 hours a day, 6 days a week, with only Sundays off for rest. The factory environment itself was a far cry from today's safety standards. Cramped, poorly ventilated spaces were the norm, filled with deafening noise from clanking machinery. The air was thick with cotton dust in textile mills, coal dust in mines, and noxious fumes in chemical plants. Workers breathed these pollutants day in and day out, leading to a host of respiratory illnesses and shortened life expectancies. Perhaps most distressing was the plight of child laborers. Children as young as 5 or 6 were put to work in these dangerous conditions. Their small size made them ideal for crawling under machinery to clear debris or fix jams, a task that often resulted in horrific injuries or death. These young workers were paid a fraction of adult wages and were often subjected to physical abuse from supervisors. Safety measures were virtually non-existent. Unguarded machinery posed constant threats of injury or dismemberment. Workers could easily get caught in belts, gears, or other moving parts, leading to gruesome accidents. Burns, cuts, and crushed limbs were commonplace occurrences, and there was no concept of workers' compensation or health care benefits. The relentless pace of work took its toll on the human body. Repetitive motions led to chronic pain and deformities. Standing for hours on end caused varicose veins and other circulatory problems. The lack of proper nutrition and rest made workers more susceptible to diseases that spread rapidly in the crowded, unsanitary conditions of industrial cities. It wasn't until reformers and labor unions began a fight for workers' rights that conditions slowly started to improve. Laws limiting work hours, establishing minimum age requirements, and mandating safety measures were gradually introduced. However, these changes came too late for countless workers who had already suffered or perished in the harsh realities of early industrial life. As you drift off to sleep, consider how different your work life is from those who toiled in these factories. The comfort of your bed and the promise of a regulated workday are luxuries that would have seemed unimaginable to the laborers of the Industrial Revolution. As we delve deeper into the lives of factory workers during the Industrial Revolution, we cannot overlook the crucial aspect of their living conditions. The housing situation for these laborers was far from ideal, often reflecting the stark realities of rapid urbanization and economic exploitation. In the early 19th century, as factories sprung up in urban centers, there was a massive influx of workers from rural areas. This sudden population boom led to a severe housing shortage in industrial cities. Factory owners, seeing an opportunity to maximize their control over workers, began constructing rows of cheap, hastily built houses near their factories. These dwellings, known as back-to-backs in England, were typically arranged in long, uniform rows. The name back-to-back came from their design, 2 rows of houses built with their backs directly against each other, sharing a common wall. This layout meant that only the front of the house had windows and doors, severely limiting ventilation and natural light. The typical factory worker's house was small, often consisting of just 2 rooms, one downstairs for living and cooking, and one upstairs for sleeping. In many cases, entire families, sometimes up to 10 people, would be crammed into these tiny spaces. Privacy was a luxury that few could afford. Sanitation was another major issue in these crowded neighborhoods. Most houses lacked indoor plumbing, and residents had to rely on communal pumps or wells for water. Waste disposal was primitive at best, with open sewers running along the streets, creating a breeding ground for disease and vermin. The close proximity of these houses to factories meant that workers were constantly exposed to industrial pollution. Smoke from factory chimneys would often blanket these neighborhoods, turning white laundry gray within hours of being hung out to dry. The constant noise from nearby machinery made rest and relaxation nearly impossible. In some cases, factory owners would rent these houses to their workers, deducting the rent directly from their wages. This system, known as the truck system in Britain, gave employers even more control over their workforce. Workers who complained about working conditions or joined unions could find themselves not only unemployed but also homeless. As the 19th century progressed, reformers began to draw attention to these appalling living conditions. Investigative journalists and social reformers like Charles Booth in London and Jacob Riis in New York documented the squalor of working-class neighborhoods, helping to spur public outrage and eventual legislative action. However, meaningful improvements in worker housing were slow to come. It wasn't until the late 19th and early 20th centuries that significant reforms began to take effect, with the introduction of building regulations, public health measures, and eventually, social housing initiatives. As we delve deeper into the lives of factory workers during the Industrial Revolution, let's turn our attention to their diet. The food consumed by these laborers was far from the varied and nutritious meals we enjoy today. Instead, their sustenance was often meager, monotonous, and barely sufficient to fuel their long hours of grueling work. In the early 19th century, the typical factory worker's diet consisted primarily of bread, potatoes, and occasionally, small amounts of cheese or bacon. Bread, being the cheapest and most readily available food, formed the cornerstone of their meals. It was often of poor quality, made from adulterated flour that could contain sawdust, chalk, or other fillers to reduce costs. Potatoes, another staple, were boiled and eaten plain or mashed. They provided some essential nutrients and were filling, but alone, they lacked the variety of vitamins and minerals necessary for good health. When workers could afford it, they might add a small piece of cheese or a sliver of bacon to their meal, providing a rare source of protein and fat. Tea, heavily sweetened with sugar, was a common beverage. It offered a brief respite from the monotony of work and provided a quick energy boost. However, the high sugar content contributed to poor dental health, a common issue among factory workers. Fruits and vegetables were scarce in the workers' diets. When available, they were often of poor quality and past their prime. This lack of fresh produce led to widespread vitamin deficiencies, contributing to various health problems such as scurvy and night blindness. Meat was a luxury that most factory workers could rarely afford. When they did manage to purchase meat, it was often of the cheapest cuts, sometimes even consisting of offal or organ meats. These were typically boiled into stews or soups to make them last longer and feed more people. The limited diet of factory workers had severe consequences on their health and productivity. Malnutrition was rampant, leading to weakened immune systems, stunted growth in children, and increased susceptibility to diseases. The lack of proper nutrition also contributed to fatigue and reduced work efficiency, creating a vicious cycle of poverty and poor health. It's worth noting that the diet of factory workers varied somewhat depending on their location and the specific industry they worked in. For instance, those in urban areas might have access to street vendors selling cheap, ready-made foods like pies or fried fish. However, these convenience foods were often of dubious quality and prepared in unsanitary conditions. As we reflect on the stark realities of the factory worker's diet during the Industrial Revolution, we can appreciate the progress made in nutrition and food accessibility in modern times. Yet, it also serves as a reminder of the ongoing challenges faced by workers in less developed parts of the world today. As we delve deeper into the annals of history, we find ourselves examining the often overlooked plight of factory workers during the Industrial Revolution. The rapid advancement of technology and manufacturing processes came at a significant cost to human health and well-being. In the cramped, poorly ventilated factories of the 19th century, workers faced a myriad of health hazards on a daily basis. The air was thick with cotton dust, metal particles, and noxious fumes, creating an environment ripe for respiratory diseases. Tuberculosis, pneumonia, and chronic bronchitis were common afflictions among factory workers, their lungs struggling to cope with the constant assault of airborne pollutants. The cacophony of machinery was not just a source of stress, but also a direct threat to workers' hearing. The incessant clanging, whirring, and pounding of industrial equipment often led to permanent hearing loss. Many workers found themselves struggling to communicate outside of the factory walls, their ability to engage in normal conversation severely impaired. Physical injuries were an ever-present danger in these early factories. Unguarded machinery with its exposed gears and belts posed a constant risk of entanglement. Workers could easily lose fingers, hands, or even entire limbs in a moment of inattention. The lack of proper safety protocols meant that such accidents were tragically common, often leaving workers permanently disabled and unable to support their families. The strain on workers' bodies extended beyond acute injuries. Long hours spent performing repetitive tasks in uncomfortable positions led to chronic musculoskeletal disorders. Back pain, joint problems, and repetitive strain injuries plagued many factory workers, their bodies wearing down prematurely under the relentless demands of industrial labor. Perhaps most insidious were the long-term effects of exposure to toxic substances. Lead, mercury, and other heavy metals were commonly used in various manufacturing processes, their dangers not yet fully narrated. The toll on mental health was equally severe. The monotony of factory work, combined with long hours and harsh conditions, often led to depression and anxiety. The constant pressure to maintain productivity, coupled with the fear of losing one's job, created a pervasive sense of stress that followed workers even beyond the factory gates. It would take decades of labor activism, scientific research, and regulatory efforts to begin addressing these health concerns. The legacy of this era serves as a stark reminder of the human cost of rapid industrialization and the importance of prioritizing worker safety and well-being in the pursuit of progress. As we conclude our exploration of the life of a factory worker during the Industrial Revolution, it's clear that their existence was far from enviable. The long hours, dangerous conditions, and meager pay created a life of constant struggle and hardship. Despite the numerous challenges, these workers played a crucial role in shaping the modern world we know today. Their labor fueled the rapid industrialization that transformed societies across the globe, laying the foundation for technological advancements and economic growth that we still benefit from. However, it's important to remember that this progress came at a significant human cost. The exploitation of workers, including children, led to widespread health issues, shortened lifespans, and a quality of life that we would find unacceptable by today's standards. The plight of these factory workers eventually sparked social reforms and the birth of labor movements. These efforts gradually improved working conditions, established labor laws, and paved the way for the rights and protections that modern workers enjoy. While we may romanticize the past or yearn for simpler times, the reality of life as a factory worker during the Industrial Revolution serves as a stark reminder of how far we've come. It's a testament to the resilience of the human spirit and the ongoing struggle for fair treatment and dignity in the workplace. As you drift off to sleep, consider how different your life might have been had you been born into that era. The alarm clock by your bedside would have been replaced by the factory whistle, your comfortable bed by a cramped, shared living space, and your weekend plans by an endless cycle of work. The next time you clock in at your job or enjoy a day off, take a moment to appreciate the sacrifices and struggles of those who came before us. Their hardships and the subsequent reforms they inspired have shaped the working world we know today, allowing us to pursue careers and lives that would have been unimaginable to a factory worker of the past. As we conclude our exploration of the Aztec warriors' rigorous lifestyle, we shift our focus to another ancient civilization known for its formidable military prowess. Let's journey across the Mediterranean to ancient Sparta, where we'll discover why you wouldn't last a day as a Spartan soldier. Their legendary discipline and brutal training regimen make the Aztecs seem almost lenient by comparison. As we drift through the sands of time, let's imagine ourselves as an ancient Egyptian farmer. The sun rises over the Nile, its rays painting the fertile banks in golden hues. You awaken on your simple reed mat, the cool morning air a brief respite from the scorching heat to come. Your day begins early, as it always does, with a quick meal of bread and beer. The fields beckon, and you know that every moment of daylight is precious in the unforgiving climate of Egypt's agricultural heartland. The ancient Egyptians were masters of agriculture, and their techniques for farming along the Nile River were both innovative and essential for their civilization's survival. Let's delve into some of the more mundane aspects of Nile farming techniques, which might just lull you into a peaceful slumber. One of the most important aspects of farming along the Nile was the annual flood cycle. Each year, between June and September, the river would overflow its banks, depositing rich silt across the floodplain. This natural phenomenon was so reliable that the ancient Egyptians divided their calendar into 3 seasons: Akhit inundation, Perit growing, and Shemu harvest. During the inundation period, farmers had little to do in the fields. They would spend this time repairing tools, maintaining irrigation channels, and paying taxes. As the floodwaters receded, they would return to their fields to prepare for planting. The Egyptians developed a system called basin irrigation to make the most of the annual flood. They created a network of earthen banks that formed basins to trap floodwater and hold it for about 6 weeks. This allowed the rich silt to settle and the soil to become saturated with moisture. Once the water was drained, farmers would plow the enriched soil using simple wooden plows pulled by oxen or humans. They would then sow their crops by hand, scattering seeds and trampling them into the soft mud with livestock. The main crops grown in ancient Egypt were wheat, barley, and flax. These were staple foods and raw materials for essential products like bread and linen. Farmers also cultivated vegetables such as onions, leeks, and garlic, as well as fruits like dates, figs, and grapes. To maintain their crops during the dry season, Egyptian farmers employed various irrigation techniques. They used shadoufs, a simple lever and bucket system, to lift water from the Nile into irrigation canals. These canals would then distribute water to the fields as needed. Another interesting aspect of Nile farming was the use of nilometers. These were structures built along the river to measure the water level during the annual flood. Priests would use nilometers to predict the success of the upcoming harvest and adjust tax rates accordingly. The ancient Egyptians also practiced crop rotation, although not in the sophisticated manner we use today. They would alternate between grain crops and nitrogen-fixing plants like lentils and peas to help maintain soil fertility. Pest control was a constant challenge for Nile farmers. They used various methods to protect their crops, including placing predatory birds in their fields to eat insects and rodents. They also developed early forms of pesticides using natural ingredients like crushed minerals and plant extracts. The agricultural year concluded with the harvest season, typically lasting from April to June. Farmers would use bronze sickles to cut the crops, which were then gathered into sheaves and transported to thrashing areas. There, the grain would be separated from the chaff using tools like winnowing scoops. As we delve deeper into the mundane aspects of ancient civilizations, let's turn our attention to the housing of Egyptian farmers. These humble dwellings, far from the grandeur of the pyramids, were the true backbone of Egyptian society. Egyptian farmers, known as fellahin, lived in simple mud brick houses. These structures were designed to be practical rather than luxurious, reflecting the modest means of their inhabitants. The mud bricks were made from Nile mud mixed with straw, then dried in the sun. This readily available material was both cheap and effective at insulating against the intense Egyptian heat. The typical farmer's house was small and cramped by modern standards. It usually consisted of just 2 or 3 rooms, with a flat roof that served multiple purposes. The main living area doubled as a sleeping space for the entire family. Privacy was a luxury these ancient Egyptians could ill afford. Windows were small and few in number, primarily to keep out the scorching sun and blowing sand. Instead, the houses relied on door openings for ventilation. Can you imagine the stuffiness on a hot summer day? The lack of proper airflow must have made the interior quite uncomfortable. Furniture was sparse and rudimentary. Most families slept on reed mats laid directly on the floor. A few wooden stools or low tables might be present, but that was about the extent of their furnishings. Cooking was typically done outside to prevent the house from overheating, with simple hearths made of mud bricks. Storage was a crucial aspect of these homes. Large ceramic jars were used to store grain and other foodstuffs, protecting them from pests and the elements. These jars were often partially buried in the floor to keep their contents cool. The flat roof of the house served multiple functions. It was used for drying crops, laundry, and even as an extra sleeping area during the hottest nights. Some families kept small livestock, like chickens or goats, in pens on the roof or in the courtyard if they had one. Sanitation was rudimentary at best. Most houses lacked proper toilets, and waste disposal was a constant challenge. Can you imagine the smell on a hot day? It's not something the tourism brochures would highlight. Despite these basic living conditions, Egyptian farmers took pride in their homes. They would often whitewash the exterior walls to reflect the sun and keep the interior cooler. Some even added simple decorations or painted designs, bringing a touch of personal expression to their otherwise utilitarian dwellings. As we ponder these ancient living conditions, it's worth noting how they shaped the daily lives of millions of Egyptians for thousands of years. The simplicity and functionality of these homes reflect the pragmatic nature of Egyptian farming life, far removed from the opulence of the pharaohs and their grand monuments. Now let's delve into the diet of an ancient Egyptian farmer, a topic that's sure to lull you into a peaceful slumber. The average Egyptian farmer's diet was far from the lavish feasts enjoyed by pharaohs and nobles. Their daily sustenance primarily consisted of bread and beer, two staples that formed the foundation of their nutritional intake. The bread was typically made from emmer wheat, a hardy grain that could withstand the harsh Egyptian climate. This bread was often dense and coarse, quite unlike the fluffy loaves we're accustomed to today. Beer, on the other hand, was not just a beverage but a significant source of calories and nutrients. It was thicker and less alcoholic than modern beer, often described as more of a gruel-like consistency. Both adults and children consumed this beer, as it was considered safer to drink than water from the Nile. To supplement their diet, Egyptian farmers would eat vegetables they grew themselves. Onions and garlic were particularly popular, not just for their flavor but also for their supposed medicinal properties. Leeks, lentils, and various types of beans were also common in their gardens. Fruits such as dates, figs, and grapes were consumed when available, providing a sweet respite from the monotony of bread and beer. These fruits were often dried to preserve them for longer periods, especially during the hot summer months. Meat was a rare luxury for the average farmer. They might occasionally catch fish from the Nile or trap wild birds, but this was not a regular occurrence. Domestic animals like cattle, sheep, and goats were too valuable as working animals or sources of milk to be slaughtered for meat frequently. During festivals or special occasions, farmers might have the opportunity to taste meat, usually in the form of offerings made to the gods. After the priests had performed the necessary rituals, the meat would be distributed among the people. The Egyptian farmers' diet was also influenced by the annual flooding of the Nile. During the inundation period, when farmlands were submerged, they relied more heavily on stored grains and dried foods. This cycle of feast and famine was an integral part of their dietary rhythm. Despite its simplicity, this diet provided Egyptian farmers with sufficient energy for their labor-intensive lifestyle. The combination of grains, vegetables, and occasional protein sources ensured they received most of the necessary nutrients, albeit in a monotonous form. As we drift off to sleep, imagine the life of an ancient Egyptian farmer, rising with the sun to tend their fields, sustained by the simple yet filling meals of bread, beer, and homegrown vegetables. Their diet, much like their daily routines, was a testament to the ingenuity and resilience of this ancient civilization. In ancient Egypt, the life of a farmer was far from easy, and one of the most burdensome aspects was the complex system of taxation. Let's delve into the monotonous details of how Egyptian farmers were taxed, a topic sure to lull you into a peaceful slumber. The foundation of Egypt's economy was agriculture, and the government knew exactly how to exploit this. Farmers were required to pay taxes in the form of crops, primarily grain. The amount of tax owed was determined by the annual flooding of the Nile, which deposited fertile silt on the farmlands. During the Old Kingdom period, around 2686 to 181 BCE, a census was conducted every 2 years. This wasn't just to count people, but primarily to assess taxable farmland and livestock. Imagine the tedium of ancient bureaucrats meticulously recording every detail of your farm. The pharaoh technically owned all the land, and farmers were essentially tenants. They were obligated to cultivate the land and pay a portion of their harvest as rent. This system was known as bikah, and it could be quite oppressive. Tax collectors known as scribes would visit farms during harvest time. They would measure the height of the Nile flood using nilometers, structures built along the river. The higher the flood, the more fertile the land, and consequently, the higher the taxes. If the flood was low, resulting in a poor harvest, farmers were still expected to pay their taxes. This often led to debt, and in extreme cases, farmers could be forced into temporary slavery to pay off what they owed. The ancient Egyptians had a clever, if somewhat unfair, method of ensuring tax compliance. They would take the grain directly from the thrashing floor before the farmer could store it. This eliminated the possibility of underporting or hiding part of the harvest. In addition to grain, farmers also paid taxes in the form of livestock, linen, and labor. Yes, you heard that right, labor was a form of tax. Farmers were required to work on state projects, such as building pyramids or temples, for a certain number of days each year. This system of taxation remained largely unchanged for thousands of years, with only minor modifications under different dynasties. It's a testament to both the stability and the stagnation of ancient Egyptian society. So the next time you grumble about your taxes, remember the ancient Egyptian farmer toiling under the hot sun, knowing that a significant portion of their hard-earned harvest would go straight to the pharaoh's coffers. Perhaps that thought will help you drift off to sleep, grateful for modern tax systems, however imperfect they may seem. As we conclude our exploration of the life of an ancient Egyptian farmer, it's clear that their existence was far from the glamorous depictions we often see in movies about Egypt. The daily grind of an Egyptian farmer was marked by relentless toil, harsh conditions, and a constant struggle against the whims of nature and society. From the crack of dawn to the setting sun, these farmers labored tirelessly in the scorching heat of the Nile Valley. Their bodies bore the marks of their arduous work, calloused hands, sun-weathered skin, and backs bent from years of stooping over crops. The simple tools they used, while ingenious for their time, required immense physical effort to operate effectively. The seasonal floods of the Nile, while crucial for agriculture, also brought uncertainty and danger. Farmers had to be vigilant, ready to adapt their practices at a moment's notice. Too little water meant drought and famine, while too much could destroy crops and homes. This delicate balance with nature was a constant source of stress and anxiety. Moreover, the social structure of ancient Egypt placed farmers near the bottom of the hierarchy. Despite producing the food that sustained the entire civilization, they received little recognition or reward for their efforts. Heavy taxation and mandatory labor for state projects further burdened their already challenging lives. Disease was another ever-present threat. The damp conditions near the Nile, combined with poor sanitation and limited medical knowledge, made farmers susceptible to a variety of ailments. Parasites like bilharzia were common, sapping strength and shortening lifespans. Yet despite these hardships, the Egyptian farmer persevered. Their resilience and ingenuity in the face of adversity were crucial to the longevity and success of ancient Egyptian civilization. Without their back-breaking labor and intimate knowledge of the land, the magnificent monuments and rich culture of Egypt might never have come to be. So the next time you see a grand pyramid or a golden pharaoh's mask, spare a thought for the countless unnamed farmers whose sweat and toil made such wonders possible. Their story, though less glamorous, is no less important to the tapestry of human history. As we conclude our exploration of Aztec warriors, let's shift our focus to another fascinating aspect of ancient civilization. Our next topic will delve into the intricacies of medieval European castle life. From the towering stone walls to the daily routines of nobles and servants alike, we'll uncover why you might not have survived long in this seemingly glamorous but often harsh environment. As we drift through the mists of time, our journey takes us to the shores of Scandinavia, where fierce warriors once roamed. The Viking Age, spanning from the late 8th to the mid-11th century, was a period of exploration, conquest, and trade. These Norse seafarers, known for their longships and battle prowess, left an indelible mark on European history. But what was life really like for a Viking raider? Let's delve into the harsh realities of their existence, far removed from the romanticized tales we often hear. Life aboard a Viking ship was far from the glamorous adventures often portrayed in modern media. These vessels, known as longships, were the pinnacle of Norse engineering, but living on one was a test of endurance and resilience. The average Viking longship measured about 30 meters in length and 5 meters in width. This may sound spacious, but consider that these ships could carry up to 60 men, along with supplies and sometimes even horses. Personal space was a luxury unknown to Viking seafarers. Sleeping arrangements were rudimentary at best. Vikings would curl up wherever they could find space, often using their shields as makeshift beds. The deck was hard and uncomfortable, and the constant rocking of the ship made restful sleep a rare occurrence. Hygiene was another significant challenge. With no proper facilities on board, Vikings had to relieve themselves over the side of the ship or in designated buckets. The stench that permeated the vessel, especially during long voyages, was overwhelming. Food and water were constant concerns. Fresh water was stored in barrels, but it often became stagnant and unpalatable during long journeys. The diet consisted mainly of dried or salted meat, fish, and hard bread. Scurvy, caused by lack of vitamin C, was a common ailment among crews. Weather was a relentless adversary. Vikings were exposed to the elements, enduring biting cold, drenching rain, and scorching sun. Their woolen and leather clothing offered some protection, but staying dry was nearly impossible. Despite these hardships, Viking ships were marvels of engineering. Their shallow draft allowed them to navigate both open seas and rivers, making them versatile for trade and warfare. The iconic square sail could be lowered, and oars used for precise maneuvering or when winds were unfavorable. Life on a Viking ship demanded constant work. When not rowing, crew members were responsible for bailing water, mending sails, and maintaining the ship. Every man was expected to be a jack of all trades, capable of handling any task required for the ship's operation and survival. The camaraderie among the crew was a crucial aspect of Viking ship life. These men lived, worked, and fought together, forming bonds that often lasted a lifetime. They shared stories, played games like chess to pass the time, and relied on each other for survival in the harsh maritime environment. As we drift through the mists of time, let's explore the often misunderstood world of Viking combat. While popular culture paints a picture of fearsome warriors in horned helmets, the reality was quite different and, dare I say, more mundane. Firstly, those iconic horned helmets, they're a complete myth. Archaeological evidence shows that Viking helmets were simple, practical affairs, typically made of iron and shaped like a bowl. Some may have had a nose guard, but none had horns. The idea of horned helmets was actually a 19th century invention, popularized by costume designers and artists. Now let's consider Viking weapons. While swords are often associated with Viking warriors, they were actually quite rare and expensive. Most Vikings would have carried spears, axes, or knives as their primary weapons. Swords were typically reserved for the wealthy or high-ranking warriors. The spear was the most common weapon, being both cheap to produce and effective in combat. It could be used for thrusting or throwing and was particularly useful in the shield wall formation, a key Viking battle tactic. Speaking of shields, they were an essential part of Viking combat. Viking shields were typically round, made of wood, and covered with leather. They were used not just for defense but also as offensive weapons, with warriors using the shield's edge to strike opponents. Viking combat wasn't all about individual heroics either. The shield wall formation was a crucial tactic. Warriors would stand shoulder to shoulder, overlapping their shields to create a solid barrier. This formation was used both defensively and offensively, with the wall slowly advancing towards the enemy. Contrary to popular belief, Vikings didn't spend all their time fighting. Most were farmers who only went on raids during the summer months when their crops didn't need tending. The image of the full-time warrior was more the exception than the rule. Viking combat training wasn't formalized like later medieval knights. Most Vikings learned to fight through practical experience and informal training within their communities. They would practice with wooden weapons from a young age, honing their skills through games and mock battles. The reality of Viking combat was often less glamorous than depicted in sagas. Battles were chaotic, brutal, and short. The goal was often to break the enemy's formation rather than engage in prolonged one-on-one combat. Once a formation broke, it usually led to a rout, with the losing side fleeing to avoid slaughter. In conclusion, while Viking combat was certainly fierce, it was far more practical and less theatrical than often portrayed. The average Viking warrior was more likely to be wielding a spear than a sword, fighting in a shield wall rather than engaging in heroic single combat. This more mundane reality, however, takes nothing away from the Vikings' reputation as formidable warriors of their time. As we continue our journey through history's less glamorous aspects, let's set sail with the Vikings and explore their rather unappetizing diet at sea. These Norse seafarers were known for their impressive voyages, but their culinary experiences on these long journeys were far from luxurious. The primary staple of the Viking diet at sea was a food called hardtack. This was a type of biscuit made from flour, water, and sometimes salt. Hardtack was incredibly durable and could last for months without spoiling, making it ideal for long sea voyages. However, the trade-off for this longevity was that hardtack was notoriously hard and unpalatable. Vikings would often have to soak it in water or ale to make it edible, and even then, it was far from a gourmet experience. Imagine trying to eat what essentially amounts to a rock-hard cracker for weeks on end. To supplement their diet of hardtack, Vikings would bring along dried and salted meats. These were typically made from beef, pork, or fish. The preservation process involved heavily salting the meat, which would then be dried in the sun or smoked. This method ensured the meat wouldn't spoil during long voyages, but it also meant that it was extremely salty and tough. Fresh water was a precious commodity on Viking ships. To conserve their limited supply, Vikings would often drink ale or beer instead. These fermented beverages were safer to drink than potentially contaminated water and provided some nutritional value. However, the constant consumption of alcohol, combined with the monotonous diet, likely led to various health issues. On longer voyages, Vikings would sometimes bring live animals on board, such as cattle or sheep. These animals served as a source of fresh meat, but keeping them alive on a cramped ship presented its own challenges. The smell and waste from these animals would have made the already uncomfortable living conditions even worse. When possible, Vikings would supplement their diet by fishing. They would use nets or lines to catch fish from the sea. This provided a welcome source of fresh food, but success was never guaranteed, and bad weather could make fishing impossible for days or even weeks. In times of desperation, particularly on unexpectedly long voyages or when supplies ran low, Vikings might resort to more extreme measures. There are historical accounts of Vikings consuming leather from their shoes or even resorting to cannibalism in dire circumstances. So the next time you're enjoying a varied and flavorful meal, spare a thought for the Viking seafarers of old. Their monotonous, often unpalatable diet at sea was just one of the many hardships they endured in their quest for exploration and conquest. As we continue our journey through history's less glamorous aspects, let's turn our attention to the harsh realities of Viking winter survival. While popular culture often romanticizes Viking life, the truth is far less appealing, especially during the coldest months of the year. Vikings, contrary to their fierce reputation, spent much of their winters simply trying to stay alive. The Scandinavian climate was unforgiving, with long, dark nights and bitterly cold temperatures. Imagine waking up in a dimly lit longhouse, your breath visible in the frigid air, as you prepare for another day of mere survival. Food was a constant concern during winter. Vikings had to meticulously plan and prepare their winter stores during the warmer months. They would smoke, dry, and salt meats and fish to preserve them. Root vegetables like turnips and carrots were stored in cool, dry places. Grains were crucial, often made into a porridge that was a staple of the Viking diet. However, if the harvest had been poor or if winter lasted longer than expected, starvation was a very real threat. Staying warm was another daily challenge. Viking clothing, while practical, was far from the fur-laden, horn-helmeted image we often see. They layered wool and linen garments, sometimes adding fur for extra warmth. Their homes, the famous longhouses, were designed to retain heat, but they were far from cozy by modern standards. Families would often sleep close together for warmth, sharing space with their livestock, which provided additional heat but also less than pleasant odors. Boredom was an unexpected enemy during these long winter months. With outdoor activities limited by the harsh weather, Vikings turned to indoor pursuits. They would spend hours repairing tools and weapons, weaving textiles, and crafting items for trade or personal use. Storytelling became an important pastime, with sagas and myths passed down orally, helping to preserve their culture and history. Disease was another significant threat during winter. The close quarters and lack of fresh food made Vikings susceptible to various illnesses. Simple colds could turn deadly, and more serious diseases could decimate entire communities. Their medical knowledge, while advanced for the time, was still limited, often relying on a mixture of herbal remedies and superstitious practices. As we drift off to sleep, consider how you might fare in these conditions. The next time you romanticize Viking life, remember the harsh realities of their winter survival. It was a life of constant work, discomfort, and uncertainty, a far cry from the adventurous raids and explorations that often define our perception of Viking existence. As we conclude our exploration of the Viking raider's life, it's clear that their existence was far from the romanticized version often portrayed in modern media. The harsh realities of their daily lives, coupled with the constant dangers they faced, paint a picture of a challenging and often brutal existence. Let's recap some of the key reasons why you likely wouldn't last a day as a Viking raider. First and foremost, the physical demands were extraordinary. The strength required to wield their heavy weapons and row longships for hours on end would be beyond the capabilities of most modern individuals. The constant exposure to the elements, particularly during long sea voyages, would take a severe toll on your body. Then there's the ever-present threat of violence. Whether engaged in raids or defending against rival clans, the life of a Viking raider was fraught with danger. The brutal hand-to-hand combat techniques and the primitive medical care of the time meant that even minor injuries could prove fatal. The psychological toll of this lifestyle cannot be understated. The constant state of alertness, the trauma of witnessing and participating in violent acts, and the long periods away from home and family would be mentally exhausting for most people today. Moreover, the social dynamics within Viking society were complex and often unforgiving. The strict hierarchical structure and the importance placed on honor and reputation meant that every action and decision carried significant weight. One misstep could lead to ostracism or worse. Lastly, the harsh living conditions and limited diet would be a shock to our modern sensibilities. The lack of proper sanitation, the prevalence of diseases, and the monotonous, often nutrient-deficient food would quickly wear down even the hardiest individual from our time. In conclusion, while the life of a Viking raider may seem exciting from a distance, the reality was far more challenging and perilous than most of us could handle. It serves as a stark reminder of how far we've come in terms of comfort, safety, and quality of life. As we drift off to sleep, let's be grateful for the relative peace and comfort of our modern existence, far removed from the harsh realities of Viking life. As we leave behind the world of Aztec warriors, we turn our attention to another fascinating, yet equally challenging historical role. Prepare to journey across time and continents as we explore a profession that was both revered and feared in medieval Europe. Get ready to discover why you wouldn't last a day as a medieval executioner. As we transition from the Aztec warriors' rigorous life, let's journey across time and continents to medieval Europe. Picture yourself in a world of stone castles, feudal lords, and chivalric codes. The life of a medieval knight might seem glamorous in tales and legends, but the reality was far from romantic. These armored warriors faced grueling training, strict social expectations, and constant danger. From boyhood to knighthood, every aspect of their lives was shaped by duty and honor. But what did it truly mean to be a knight in the Middle Ages? In our modern imagination, the life of a medieval knight often conjures images of chivalry, valor, and grand tournaments. However, the reality of knight training was far less glamorous and significantly more grueling than most people realize. Knight training began at a very young age, typically around 7 years old. Young boys from noble families would be sent away from home to serve as pages in the household of a lord or knight. This wasn't just a gentle introduction to knightly ways, it was a harsh separation from family and the comforts of home. As pages, these children would perform menial tasks around the castle, such as serving meals, running errands, and caring for horses. This wasn't just busy work, it was designed to instill discipline, obedience, and humility, qualities deemed essential for a future knight. By the age of 14, if deemed worthy, a page would be promoted to the rank of squire. This marked the beginning of more intensive martial training. Squires would learn to wield various weapons, ride horses in full armor, and master the art of mounted combat. This training was physically demanding and often dangerous. Injuries were common and fatalities weren't unheard of. The weight of armor alone was a significant challenge. A full suit of plate armor could weigh up to 50 kilograms, or about 110 pounds. Imagine trying to fight effectively while carrying the equivalent of a large dog on your body. The daily routine of a squire was exhausting. They would wake before dawn to attend to their knight's needs, help him dress in his armor, and prepare his weapons. Throughout the day, they would engage in rigorous combat training, often practicing for hours under the hot sun in heavy armor. But physical training was only part of a knight's education. They were also expected to learn courtly manners, music, dance, and even poetry. This combination of martial prowess and refined culture was the ideal of chivalry, though reality often fell short of this lofty goal. The path to knighthood could take over a decade, and not all who began the journey would complete it. Many would wash out due to injury, lack of aptitude, or simply the inability to endure the grueling lifestyle. Those who did make it to knighthood often bore the scars, both physical and mental, of their harsh training. So the next time you romanticize the life of a medieval knight, remember the years of arduous training, the physical toll, and the early sacrifice of childhood that went into forging these warriors. The reality was far from the fairy tale image we often imagine. Moving on from the Aztec warriors, let's delve into the world of medieval European knights and their iconic armor. While knights are often romanticized in popular culture, the reality of wearing their armor was far from glamorous or comfortable. A full suit of plate armor, which became prevalent in the 15th century, could weigh anywhere between 30 to 50 kilograms, or 66 to 110 pounds. This substantial weight was distributed across the knight's entire body, making even simple movements a test of endurance. The process of donning a suit of armor was a time-consuming affair that required assistance. It could take up to an hour for a knight to be fully dressed in his armor, with each piece carefully strapped and buckled into place. This meant that knights couldn't simply throw on their armor at a moment's notice. Once fully armored, a knight's mobility was significantly restricted. The joints of the armor, while designed to allow movement, were far from perfect. Simple actions like mounting a horse or bending down to pick up a dropped weapon became challenging tasks. The weight and constriction of the armor also led to rapid fatigue. Knights had to train extensively to build the strength and stamina needed to fight effectively while wearing their armor. Even then, prolonged combat could quickly exhaust even the most well-conditioned warriors. Heat was another major issue. The metal armor acted like an oven, trapping body heat and causing knights to sweat profusely. This led to severe dehydration, especially during long battles or tournaments held in summer months. Some knights even fainted from heat exhaustion while wearing their armor. Visibility was also compromised when wearing a full helmet. The eye slits, while necessary for protection, severely limited a knight's field of vision. This made it difficult to spot incoming attacks or navigate complex battlefield situations. Despite these drawbacks, knights continued to wear armor because of its effectiveness in combat. The plates could deflect sword blows, arrows, and even early firearms, making it a crucial element of medieval warfare. However, as firearms became more powerful and prevalent on the battlefield, the effectiveness of heavy armor diminished. By the 17th century, full plate armor had largely fallen out of use, marking the end of an era in military technology. So while the image of a knight in shining armor may seem romantic, the reality was far less glamorous. The burden of their protective gear was a constant reminder of the harsh realities of medieval combat. As we delve deeper into the annals of history, we find ourselves face to face with the formidable knights of medieval Europe. These armored warriors were not just symbols of chivalry, but highly trained combatants with a diverse array of combat techniques. Let's explore some of the methods they employed on the battlefield, each as sleep-inducing as the last. One of the primary techniques used by knights was the couched lance charge. This involved securing their lance under their arm while charging on horseback. The technique required immense skill to master, as the knight had to maintain balance, control their horse, and aim their lance simultaneously. The impact of a successful charge could be devastating, often unseating opponents or piercing through armor. When not on horseback, knights were proficient in close-quarters combat. They utilized a variety of weapons, including longswords, maces, and war hammers. The longsword, in particular, was a versatile weapon that could be used for both cutting and thrusting. Knights would train extensively in various guards and stances, each with its own set of attacks and defenses. One such technique was the half-swording method, where the knight would grip the blade of their sword with their offhand to gain better control for thrusting attacks against armored opponents. This technique, while seemingly counterintuitive, allowed for more precise strikes at weak points in the armor. Knights also employed grappling techniques, which were particularly useful when fighting in full armor. These techniques included throws, joint locks, and even ground fighting. The additional weight and restricted movement of armor made these close combat situations particularly grueling and exhausting. Another important aspect of knight combat was defensive techniques. Knights were trained to use their shields effectively, not just as a passive defense, but as an offensive tool as well. They could use the edge of the shield to strike opponents or push them off balance. In addition to physical combat techniques, knights also had to master horsemanship. This included not only riding skills but also the ability to fight effectively while mounted. They practiced maneuvers such as the caracal, where groups of mounted knights would approach the enemy, fire ranged weapons, and then wheel away to reload. As warfare evolved, so did the knights' techniques. With the advent of plate armor, knights had to adapt their fighting style. They developed techniques to exploit the weak points in armor, such as aiming for gaps at the joints or using specialized weapons like the poleaxe, which combine the cutting edge of an axe, the spike of a warhammer, and the point of a spear. These combat techniques, honed through years of training and battlefield experience, made knights formidable opponents. However, their effectiveness began to wane with the introduction of gunpowder weapons and changing military tactics. And so, like many aspects of history, the era of knight combat techniques gradually faded into the mists of time, leaving behind a legacy that continues to capture our imagination, and hopefully lull us gently to sleep. Knights weren't just warriors, they were also expected to fulfill various social obligations. These responsibilities were an integral part of their role in medieval society, extending far beyond the battlefield. One of the primary social duties of a knight was to serve as a role model for chivalry and courtly behavior. They were expected to embody the ideals of honor, courage, and loyalty, not just in combat, but in their everyday interactions. Knights often served as advisors to their lords or kings. Their opinions were valued in matters of war, politics, and governance. This meant that knights needed to be well versed in current affairs and diplomacy, not just skilled with a sword. Participating in tournaments was another crucial social obligation for knights. These events were not merely about combat prowess. They were elaborate social gatherings where knights could network, showcase their skills, and potentially catch the eye of wealthy patrons or eligible noble ladies. Knights were also expected to be patrons of the arts. Many supported troubadours, poets, and artists, helping to foster the cultural life of the medieval court. This patronage was seen as a way to demonstrate their refinement and contribute to society beyond military service. Charitable acts were another important aspect of a knight's social duties. They were expected to protect the weak, support the church, and provide aid to those in need. This could involve donating to religious institutions, supporting widows and orphans, or offering protection to travelers. Education played a significant role in a knight's life as well. They were expected to be literate and knowledgeable about history, law, and theology. Many knights pursued studies in these areas to better fulfill their roles as advisors and leaders. Knights also had obligations to their own households. They were responsible for managing their estates, overseeing agricultural production, and ensuring the well-being of the people under their protection. This required skills in economics, agriculture, and local governance. Maintaining alliances and feudal relationships was another crucial social duty. Knights had to navigate complex networks of loyalty, often balancing obligations to multiple lords or patrons. This required diplomatic skills and a keen understanding of political dynamics. Lastly, knights were expected to uphold and enforce the law within their territories. They often served as judges in local disputes, requiring a thorough understanding of legal codes and customs. These diverse social obligations meant that the life of a knight was far more complex than simply training for battle. They were expected to be warriors, diplomats, patrons, managers, and exemplars of virtue, a demanding set of roles that shaped medieval society. As we conclude our exploration of the life of a medieval knight, it's clear that their existence was far from the romanticized tales often depicted in literature and film. The reality was a grueling combination of intense physical training, unwavering loyalty, and constant readiness for battle. Knights were not merely skilled warriors, but also had to navigate complex social and political landscapes. Their code of chivalry demanded honor, courage, and protection of the weak, yet they often found themselves caught between these ideals and the harsh realities of feudal warfare. The weight of their armor while providing protection was a constant burden. Imagine wearing up to 100 pounds of metal for hours on end, whether in battle or during tournaments. This physical strain, combined with the mental stress of combat and the ever-present risk of injury or death, made a knight's life one of constant challenge. Moreover, the financial aspects of knighthood were often overlooked. The cost of equipment, horses, and maintaining a suitable lifestyle was enormous. Many knights found themselves in debt, struggling to balance their noble status with economic realities. It's also worth noting that the life of a knight was not solely about combat. They were expected to be well-rounded individuals, versed in courtly manners, music, and even poetry. This multifaceted role added another layer of complexity to their already demanding lives. In the end, while the title of knight carried great prestige, it also came with immense responsibilities and hardships. The glamorous image we often associate with knights was, in reality, a life of discipline, danger, and duty. It required a level of dedication and resilience that few in the modern world could truly comprehend or endure. As we reflect on the life of a medieval knight, we're reminded that history often presents us with a more nuanced and challenging picture than what popular culture might suggest. The knights of old were indeed extraordinary individuals, but their lives were far from enviable by today's standards. As we conclude our exploration of the Aztec warriors' rigorous life, we shift our focus to another ancient civilization known for its formidable military prowess. Let's journey across the Mediterranean to the heart of Greece, where we'll uncover the demanding world of the Spartan warrior. Their legendary discipline and unwavering dedication to combat shaped history in ways that still resonate today. As we transition from the rigorous life of an Aztec warrior, let's journey across the Pacific to feudal Japan. Here we encounter another legendary class of warriors, the samurai. While often romanticized in popular culture, the daily life of a samurai was far from glamorous. These skilled swordsmen lived by a strict code of honor known as Bushido, which governed every aspect of their existence. From dawn to dusk, their routines were carefully regimented, balancing martial training with scholarly pursuits and spiritual practices. Let's delve into the mundane, yet fascinating details of a typical day in the life of a samurai. As we delve deeper into the rigorous world of historical warriors, let's turn our attention to the disciplined life of the samurai. The samurai training regimen was a lifelong commitment that began in childhood and continued until death. From a young age, typically around 7 or 8 years old, future samurai would start their education. This wasn't just about learning to fight, it encompassed a wide range of subjects including literature, philosophy, and the arts. The concept of bunbu ryodo, or the way of the literary and military arts, was central to samurai education. Physical training was, of course, a crucial component. Young samurai would begin with wooden practice swords called bakken before graduating to real blades. They would spend hours each day practicing sword techniques known as kenjutsu. This included mastering various stances, strikes, and defensive maneuvers. But swordsmanship was just one aspect of their martial training. Samurai were expected to be proficient in a variety of weapons, including the bow and arrow, spear, and later, firearms. They also practiced unarmed combat techniques such as jujutsu, which could be crucial in close-quarters situations or if disarmed. Equally important to their physical skills was the development of mental discipline. Meditation was a key part of samurai training, helping to cultivate focus, calm under pressure, and spiritual strength. Many samurai practiced Zen Buddhism, which emphasized self-control and mindfulness. The code of Bushido, or the way of the warrior, governed every aspect of a samurai's life. This ethical code stressed loyalty, duty, and honor above all else. Samurai were expected to live by these principles both on and off the battlefield. As part of their training, samurai would often engage in various forms of ascetic practices. This could include standing under freezing waterfalls, fasting, or enduring long periods of isolation. These practices were believed to strengthen both body and spirit, preparing the samurai for the hardships of battle. The training regimen also included practical skills such as horsemanship, as mounted combat was a crucial part of samurai warfare. They would spend countless hours perfecting their ability to ride and fight from horseback. It's important to note that this intense training continued throughout a samurai's life. Even seasoned warriors would dedicate time each day to honing their skills and maintaining their physical and mental discipline. The path of the samurai was one of constant self-improvement and dedication to their art. As we delve deeper into the annals of history, we encounter the enigmatic world of the samurai, the noble warriors of feudal Japan. At the heart of their existence lay a profound ethical code known as Bushido, which translates to the way of the warrior. This code, while not formally codified until the 17th century, had been shaping samurai conduct for centuries prior. Bushido encompassed 7 core virtues that every samurai was expected to embody. The first of these was gi, or righteousness. Samurai were expected to make decisions and act in an ethical manner, always choosing the path of justice and moral rectitude. This often meant putting the needs of their lord or society above their own personal desires. The second virtue was yu, or courage. Samurai were required to face any challenge or danger without hesitation, displaying bravery in the face of adversity. This didn't merely apply to physical courage on the battlefield, but also moral courage in daily life, standing up for what was right even when it was difficult. Jin, or benevolence, formed the third pillar of Bushido. Despite their fierce reputation as warriors, samurai were expected to show compassion and mercy. This virtue emphasized the importance of using their strength to help others and contribute positively to society. The fourth virtue, rei, or respect, governed the samurai's interactions with others. They were to show proper etiquette and courtesy to all, regardless of social status. This respect extended not only to other humans, but also to nature and the world around them. Makoto, or honesty and sincerity, was the fifth virtue. Samurai were expected to be truthful in word and deed, never engaging in deceit or duplicity. This virtue was closely tied to the concept of honor, which was paramount in samurai culture. The sixth virtue, meiyo, or honor, was perhaps the most well-known aspect of Bushido. Samurai were to guard their reputation and that of their lord with their lives. The concept of honor was so deeply ingrained that many samurai would choose ritual suicide, known as seppuku, rather than live with dishonor. Finally, there was chugi, or duty and loyalty. Samurai were expected to be unfailingly loyal to their lord, even unto death. This loyalty was not blind obedience, but rather a deep commitment born of mutual respect and obligation. The code of Bushido shaped every aspect of a samurai's life, from their martial training to their artistic pursuits. It demanded constant self-improvement and discipline, creating warriors who were not just skilled in combat, but also cultured, ethical, and deeply philosophical. While the age of the samurai has long since passed, the principles of Bushido continue to influence Japanese culture and have found resonance in various forms around the world. The ideals of honor, loyalty, and self-discipline that it espouses still hold relevance in our modern world, offering insights into the complexities of human nature and the eternal quest for moral and ethical living. The life of a samurai extended far beyond the battlefield. These warriors were not just skilled fighters, but also integral members of Japanese society with numerous responsibilities and expectations placed upon them. One of the primary social duties of a samurai was to serve as a role model for the common people. They were expected to embody the virtues of Bushido, the samurai code of conduct, which included loyalty, honor, duty, and self-discipline. This meant that samurai had to maintain a dignified and composed demeanor in public at all times. Samurai were also responsible for maintaining order within their lord's domain. They acted as local administrators, overseeing tax collection, mediating disputes, and enforcing laws. This required a level of education and literacy that set them apart from the general population. In times of peace, many samurai took on roles as scholars, artists, or teachers. They were expected to cultivate their minds as well as their martial skills. Poetry, calligraphy, and tea ceremony were common pursuits among the samurai class. This emphasis on cultural refinement was seen as a way to balance the warrior's violent profession with more peaceful pursuits. Samurai families had strict social obligations as well. Marriages were often arranged to forge alliances between clans or to strengthen political ties. The samurai's wife was expected to manage the household and raise children according to samurai values. She was also trained in martial arts to defend the home in her husband's absence. Another important aspect of samurai social life was the practice of gift-giving. Elaborate rituals surrounded the exchange of presents between samurai of different ranks, reinforcing social bonds and hierarchies. These gifts could range from practical items like weapons to luxury goods such as fine textiles or artwork. Samurai were also expected to participate in various ceremonies and rituals throughout the year. These included religious observances at local shrines and temples, as well as formal gatherings at the lord's castle. Such events provided opportunities for samurai to demonstrate their etiquette and social graces. The concept of face or reputation was crucial in samurai society. A samurai's actions not only reflected on himself but on his entire clan. This meant that maintaining one's honor and avoiding public disgrace was of utmost importance. Even the smallest slight could lead to serious consequences, including ritual suicide to preserve one's honor. As we can see, the life of a samurai was far more complex than simply being a warrior. Their social responsibilities were numerous and demanding, requiring a delicate balance of martial prowess, administrative skill, cultural refinement, and unwavering adherence to a strict moral code. As we transition from the fierce Aztec warriors, let's explore another legendary warrior class in a different context, the samurai during times of peace. The samurai, Japan's elite military class, are often romanticized for their martial prowess and strict code of honor. However, their lives during peacetime were far more complex and at times surprisingly mundane. During the Edo period, which lasted from 1603 to 1868, Japan experienced an extended era of peace. This presented a unique challenge for the samurai class, whose primary purpose had always been warfare. With no battles to fight, samurai had to adapt to new roles and responsibilities. Many samurai found themselves serving as bureaucrats in the Tokugawa shogunate's complex administrative system. They became tax collectors, record keepers, and local governors. While these positions maintained their social status, they were a far cry from the glorious battlefield exploits of their ancestors. To maintain their martial skills, samurai engaged in regular training and practice. Sword techniques, archery, and horsemanship were still important parts of their daily routines. However, these activities began to take on a more ceremonial nature, with formalized demonstrations replacing actual combat. The samurai class also placed great emphasis on education and cultural pursuits during peacetime. Many samurai became accomplished in various arts, including calligraphy, poetry, and tea ceremony. This focus on refinement and intellectual development was seen as an essential part of the samurai ethos, embodying the ideal of the warrior scholar. Despite their elevated social status, many samurai faced financial difficulties during this period. With no wars to fight, their stipends from their lords often remained static while the cost of living increased. Some samurai were forced to take on side jobs or even sell their prized possessions to make ends meet. The peace of the Edo period also led to a gradual erosion of the samurai's military skills. With no real combat experience for generations, many samurai became more adept at bureaucratic tasks than warfare. This decline in martial prowess would eventually contribute to the downfall of the samurai class during the Meiji Restoration. As we conclude this segment on samurai in peacetime, we see that the life of these warriors was not always filled with excitement and danger. Instead, it often involved a delicate balance between maintaining traditional values and adapting to a changing world. The samurai's journey from fierce warriors to cultured administrators reflects the complex nature of societal evolution and the challenges faced by those caught between tradition and progress. As we conclude our exploration of the samurai, it's important to reflect on the profound impact these warriors had on Japanese history and culture. The samurai's influence extended far beyond the battlefield, shaping the very essence of Japanese society for centuries. The code of Bushido, which governed the samurai's way of life, emphasized virtues such as loyalty, honor, and self-discipline. These principles continue to resonate in modern Japanese society, influencing business practices, social interactions, and personal conduct. The samurai's dedication to their craft and unwavering loyalty to their lords set a standard for excellence that still inspires many today. However, it's crucial to remember that the life of a samurai was not all glory and honor. The rigid social hierarchy of feudal Japan meant that samurai were bound by strict rules and expectations. The pressure to uphold their status and maintain their family's honor could be overwhelming, often leading to internal conflicts and personal sacrifices. The fall of the samurai class in the late 19th century marked the end of an era, but their legacy lives on. From the iconic katana swords to the intricate armor, from the tea ceremony to martial arts like kendo and the aido, the cultural footprint of the samurai remains deeply ingrained in Japan's national identity. In modern pop culture, samurai continue to captivate audiences worldwide through films, literature, and art. Their stoic demeanor, skilled swordsmanship, and complex code of ethics provide rich material for storytellers and creators, ensuring that the legend of the samurai endures. As we've seen throughout this segment, the life of a samurai was one of discipline, danger, and dedication. While the romantic notion of the noble warrior may be appealing, the reality was far more complex and challenging. The samurai's unwavering commitment to their principles and their lord, even in the face of certain death, remains a testament to their extraordinary resolve and the power of their cultural conditioning. As we conclude our exploration of Aztec warriors, let's shift our focus to another fascinating yet soporific topic from history. We'll now delve into the intricate world of medieval European guilds, examining their structure, influence, and impact on society. These organizations played a crucial role in shaping the economic landscape of the Middle Ages, but their complex regulations and hierarchies might just lull you into a peaceful slumber. As the California gold rush swept across the nation in 1849, thousands of eager prospectors flocked to the West Coast, dreaming of striking it rich. But the life of a gold rush miner was far from glamorous. Your day would begin before dawn, rising from a makeshift tent or cramped boarding house. The air would be thick with anticipation and the musty scent of unwashed bodies. You'd grab your pickaxe, shovel, and gold pan, your muscles already aching from yesterday's labor. The rush to the river would be frantic, everyone desperate to claim the best spots. As we delve deeper into the annals of history, we find ourselves exploring the intricate world of gold mining techniques. These methods, while fascinating to historians, were often tedious and laborious for those who practiced them. In ancient times, gold mining was a painstaking process that relied heavily on manual labor. One of the earliest techniques was panning, a method still used by some hobbyists today. Miners would scoop sediment from riverbeds into a shallow pan and swirl it around, allowing the water to wash away lighter materials while the heavier gold particles settled at the bottom. As civilizations advanced, so did their mining techniques. The Romans introduced hydraulic mining, which used powerful streams of water to dislodge gold-bearing rock faces. This method, while more efficient than panning, required extensive infrastructure and often led to significant environmental damage. During the Middle Ages, shaft mining became prevalent. Miners would dig deep vertical shafts into the earth, following veins of gold-bearing quartz. This dangerous work often resulted in cave-ins and poor air quality, leading to numerous fatalities and health issues among miners. The California gold rush of the mid-19th century saw the introduction of sluice boxes. These long, narrow channels with riffles along the bottom allowed miners to process larger volumes of sediment. Water would be directed through the sluice, carrying gold-bearing material over the riffles where the heavier gold would become trapped. As technology progressed, more sophisticated methods emerged. Mercury amalgamation became a popular technique in the 19th century. Miners would use mercury to bind with gold particles, forming an amalgam that could be easily separated later. However, this method posed severe health and environmental risks due to mercury's toxic nature. The cyanide process, developed in the late 19th century, revolutionized gold extraction. This chemical method allowed for the recovery of gold from low-grade ores, making previously unprofitable mines viable. Despite its efficiency, the use of cyanide raised significant environmental concerns. In modern times, gold mining has become a highly industrialized process. Open-pit mining, where large areas of land are excavated to extract gold-bearing ore, is now common. This method, while efficient, often leads to dramatic changes in landscapes and ecosystems. Today, efforts are being made to develop more sustainable gold mining techniques. Some companies are exploring bioleaching, which uses bacteria to extract gold from ore, potentially reducing the environmental impact of traditional methods. As we conclude this segment on gold mining techniques, we're reminded of the enduring human fascination with this precious metal and the lengths to which we've gone to obtain it throughout history. As we delve into the daily life of a gold rush camp, we uncover a world far removed from the glittering promises that lured thousands to California in the mid-19th century. The reality of camp life was often harsh, dirty, and fraught with challenges that many prospectors were ill-prepared to face. Upon arriving at the goldfields, miners would typically construct rudimentary shelters. These ranged from simple canvas tents to slightly more elaborate wooden shacks, often cobbled together with whatever materials were at hand. Privacy was a luxury few could afford, as these makeshift dwellings were often crowded together in haphazard arrangements. The day of a gold miner would begin early, often before dawn. They would rise from their uncomfortable bedrolls or rough wooden bunks, ready to face another grueling day of backbreaking labor. Breakfast, if they were fortunate enough to have it, usually consisted of beans, bacon, and coffee, a diet that would become monotonous over time, but provided the calories needed for the physical demands ahead. Work in the goldfields was exhausting and relentless. Miners would spend hours standing in icy streams, panning for gold or operating sluice boxes. Others would engage in more labor-intensive methods like digging shafts or tunneling into hillsides. The work was not only physically demanding but also dangerous, with the constant risk of cave-ins, flooding, or injuries from crude tools and equipment. As the day wore on, the miners would face numerous challenges. The summer heat in California's valleys could be oppressive, while winters brought freezing temperatures and the threat of snow. Dust was a constant companion, coating everything and everyone in a fine layer of grit. Water, ironically, was often scarce for drinking and washing, despite being essential for mining operations. When the day's work was done, miners would return to their camps, exhausted and often disappointed. For many, the dream of striking it rich remained elusive, with barely enough gold found to cover their expenses. Evenings in camp were spent preparing simple meals, mending clothes and equipment, and perhaps engaging in simple forms of entertainment like storytelling or card games. Disease was a constant threat in these crowded, unsanitary conditions. Dysentery, cholera, and other illnesses spread rapidly through the camps. Medical care was rudimentary at best, and many miners succumbed to diseases that would have been treatable in more civilized settings. Despite the hardships, a sense of community often developed in these camps. Miners from diverse backgrounds found themselves united by their common goal and shared experiences. This camaraderie provided some solace in the face of the daily grind and frequent disappointments of gold rush life. The California Gold Rush of 1849 brought thousands of hopeful prospectors to the West Coast, all dreaming of striking it rich. But while visions of gold nuggets danced in their heads, the reality of daily life during this period was far less glamorous, especially when it came to diet and health. The typical gold rush diet was, to put it mildly, nutritionally deficient. Fresh fruits and vegetables were scarce, and most miners subsisted on a monotonous menu of beans, bacon, and bread. This diet, lacking in essential vitamins and minerals, led to widespread malnutrition among the miners. One of the most common ailments resulting from this poor diet was scurvy, a disease caused by vitamin C deficiency. Symptoms of scurvy included bleeding gums, loose teeth, and painful joints. In severe cases, it could lead to death. Ironically, the cure for scurvy, fresh fruits and vegetables, was often just out of reach for many miners focused solely on their quest for gold. Another dietary staple of the gold rush era was hardtack, a type of biscuit made from flour, water, and sometimes salt. While it had a long shelf life, hardtack was notoriously difficult to eat. Miners often had to soak it in coffee or water to make it edible, and it was not uncommon to find weevils or other insects burrowed inside these rock-hard biscuits. The lack of proper nutrition weakened the miners' immune systems, making them more susceptible to various diseases. Cholera was a particularly devastating illness during this time. Spread through contaminated water and food, cholera caused severe diarrhea and dehydration, often leading to death within hours if left untreated. Dysentery was another common affliction in the mining camps. Poor sanitation and contaminated water sources contributed to its spread. The disease caused severe intestinal inflammation, bloody diarrhea, and fever. Many miners succumbed to dysentery, their dreams of wealth cut short by this brutal illness. Typhoid fever also ran rampant through the mining communities. Caused by the Salmonella typhi bacteria, it spread through contaminated food and water. Symptoms included high fever, abdominal pain, and rose-colored spots on the chest. Without proper medical care, typhoid fever could be fatal. The overcrowded and unsanitary conditions in mining camps provided the perfect breeding ground for these diseases. With limited medical knowledge and resources, many miners turned to folk remedies or patent medicines, which were often ineffective at best and harmful at worst. Despite the harsh realities of diet and disease during the gold rush, the allure of potential riches kept miners pouring into California. Their perseverance in the face of these challenges is a testament to the human spirit and the powerful draw of the American dream. The California Gold Rush of 1849 was not just a pivotal moment in American history. It also had far-reaching economic consequences that shaped the development of the western United States. Let's delve into the economic intricacies of this transformative period. As news of gold discovery spread, thousands of prospectors flocked to California, creating an unprecedented population boom. This sudden influx of people had a dramatic effect on the local economy. The demand for basic goods and services skyrocketed, leading to severe inflation. A simple wool blanket that might have cost $4 in New York could fetch upwards of $250 in San Francisco. The economic impact extended far beyond California's borders. Eastern manufacturers scrambled to produce equipment for miners, such as picks, shovels, and pans. This surge in manufacturing helped fuel the Industrial Revolution in the United States. Additionally, the increased demand for faster transportation to California spurred the development of railroads and steamship lines. One of the most significant economic outcomes of the gold rush was the rapid growth of San Francisco. The city transformed from a small settlement of about 200 residents in 1846 to a bustling metropolis of 36,000 by 1852. This explosive growth led to the establishment of numerous businesses, banks, and trading companies, cementing San Francisco's position as a major economic hub on the West Coast. The gold rush also had a profound impact on agriculture. As miners needed to be fed, many entrepreneurs realized that mining the miners could be more profitable than searching for gold. This led to the development of California's agricultural industry, which remains a cornerstone of the state's economy to this day. Interestingly, while many prospectors dreamed of striking it rich, the reality was quite different. The average miner barely made enough to cover their expenses. The real wealth was often accumulated by merchants and service providers who catered to the miners' needs. Levi Strauss, for example, made his fortune not by mining gold, but by selling durable pants to miners. The gold rush also had significant monetary implications. The influx of gold into the money supply contributed to inflation and economic instability. In response, the U.S. government established a branch mint in San Francisco in 1854 to help regulate the flow of gold into the economy. In conclusion, the California gold rush was a complex economic phenomenon that went far beyond the simple act of prospecting for gold. Its effects rippled through various sectors of the economy, accelerating industrialization, spurring migration, and reshaping the economic landscape of the United States. The legacy of this period continues to influence California's economy and its position as a center of innovation and entrepreneurship to this day. As we conclude our exploration of the life of a gold rush miner, it's clear that the promise of instant wealth often led to disappointment and hardship. The reality of life in the gold fields was far from the romanticized tales that drew so many to California in the mid-19th century. The physical toll on these miners was immense. Days spent bent over in icy streams, sifting through countless pebbles and sand, left many with chronic back pain and rheumatism. The harsh working conditions, combined with poor nutrition and lack of medical care, meant that many miners suffered from scurvy, dysentery, and other debilitating illnesses. Moreover, the psychological impact of the gold rush life was equally devastating. The constant cycle of hope and disappointment wore down even the most optimistic of miners. Many succumbed to depression, alcoholism, and gambling addiction as they struggled to cope with their unfulfilled dreams of striking it rich. The environmental consequences of the gold rush were also severe and long-lasting. The use of hydraulic mining techniques devastated entire landscapes, washing away hillsides and filling valleys with debris. Rivers were polluted with mercury used in gold extraction, poisoning fish and wildlife for generations to come. It's worth noting that while some miners did indeed strike it rich, they were the exception rather than the rule. For every success story, there were thousands of miners who returned home empty-handed, having spent their life savings on a fruitless adventure. In the end, the true beneficiaries of the gold rush were often not the miners themselves, but the merchants and service providers who catered to their needs. Levi Strauss, for example, made his fortune not by mining gold, but by selling durable work pants to the miners. The California gold rush, while a pivotal moment in American history, serves as a cautionary tale about the dangers of get-rich-quick schemes and the often harsh realities behind seemingly golden opportunities. It reminds us that true wealth often comes not from sudden windfalls, but from steady work, careful planning, and a bit of luck. As we conclude our exploration of Aztec warriors, let's transition to another fascinating yet soporific historical topic. Our next journey takes us across time and continents, delving into the intricate world of medieval European guilds. These organizations played a crucial role in shaping society, economy, and craftsmanship during the Middle Ages. Prepare to uncover the mundane yet historically significant details of guild life and structure. As we sail into the next chapter of our historical slumber, let's embark on a journey to the golden age of piracy. Picture yourself aboard a creaking wooden ship, the salty sea breeze filling your nostrils. The year is 1715, and you've just joined the crew of the notorious pirate captain, Bartholomew Roberts. Little do you know, the life of a pirate is far from the romanticized tales you've heard. From back-breaking labor to constant danger, you're about to discover why you wouldn't last a day as a member of a pirate ship crew. Life aboard a pirate ship was far from the romanticized tales we often hear. The reality was much grimmer, filled with hardship, disease, and constant danger. Let's start with the living conditions. Pirate ships were notoriously overcrowded, with crew members often forced to sleep on deck or in cramped, stuffy quarters below. Privacy was non-existent, and personal hygiene was a luxury few could afford. The lack of proper sanitation led to rampant disease. Rats and other vermin were constant companions, spreading illness and contaminating food supplies. Scurvy, caused by vitamin C deficiency, was a common affliction, leading to bleeding gums, loose teeth, and eventual death if left untreated. Speaking of food, the diet aboard a pirate ship was monotonous and often barely edible. Hardtack, a type of hard biscuit, was a staple. These rock-hard crackers were often infested with weevils, which sailors would have to knock out before eating. Salted meat, when available, was tough and unpalatable. Fresh water was a precious commodity. What little they had often became stagnant and contaminated during long voyages. As a result, many pirates turned to alcohol, particularly rum, as a safer alternative. This led to widespread drunkenness and its associated problems. The work itself was backbreaking and dangerous. Pirates had to constantly maintain their ships, which meant repairing sails, scrubbing decks, and pumping out water to prevent sinking. All this had to be done while battling seasickness, harsh weather, and the constant threat of naval patrols or rival pirate crews. Injuries were common and medical care was primitive at best. A ship's surgeon, if they had one, often had little formal training. Amputations were performed without anesthesia, and infections were rampant due to unsanitary conditions. The threat of violence was ever present. Disputes among crew members could quickly turn deadly, and encounters with other ships often led to brutal combat. Those captured by authorities faced severe punishment, including imprisonment, torture, or execution. Despite these hardships, many chose the pirate life as an escape from even worse conditions in legitimate naval or merchant services. The promise of freedom and potential riches was enough to lure many into this perilous existence, despite the grim realities that awaited them on the high seas. As we continue our journey through the less glamorous aspects of history, let's set sail for the harsh realities of pirate combat. While popular culture often romanticizes the swashbuckling adventures of pirates, the truth is far less appealing and certainly not conducive to a good night's sleep. Pirate ships were often cramped, unsanitary vessels teeming with disease and vermin. The close quarters meant that fights could break out at any moment, and the constant threat of mutiny loomed over every voyage. When it came to actual combat, pirates didn't engage in elaborate sword fights or swing from ropes as depicted in movies. Instead, their primary tactic was intimidation. Pirates would often fly false flags to approach merchant ships, then raise their infamous Jolly Roger at the last moment to instill fear and encourage surrender without a fight. This strategy was born out of necessity, as damaged ships and injured crew members were bad for business. When combat did occur, it was brutal and swift. Pirates favored short-range weapons like pistols, blunderbusses, and grenades. These weapons were effective in close quarters, but wildly inaccurate and dangerous to both friend and foe alike. The sound and smoke from these firearms in enclosed spaces would have been deafening and disorienting. Contrary to popular belief, walking the plank was rarely used as a form of execution. Pirates preferred more immediate and gruesome methods, such as marooning victims on deserted islands or simply throwing them overboard. The threat of such fates was often enough to coerce captured sailors into joining pirate crews. Life aboard a pirate ship was far from the adventurous paradise often portrayed. Scurvy, malnutrition, and other diseases were rampant due to poor diet and lack of fresh water. Many pirates suffered from vitamin C deficiency, leading to bleeding gums, loose teeth, and painful joints. The constant dampness and lack of hygiene also led to fungal infections and parasites. Pirates often sustained horrific injuries during combat or everyday ship operations. Without proper medical care, even minor wounds could become infected and lead to amputations or death. The ship's surgeon, if there was one, often had little more than rum for anesthesia and a saw for treatment. The romantic notion of buried treasure is largely a myth. Most pirate loot consisted of practical goods like food, weapons, and ship supplies. Any valuable items were usually sold or traded quickly to avoid detection. The idea of pirates retiring wealthy was rare. Most died young from violence, disease, or execution if captured. The life of a pirate was far from glamorous, especially when it came to their diet at sea. Let's explore the unappetizing reality of what pirates ate during their long voyages. First and foremost, pirates relied heavily on preserved foods that could withstand long periods without refrigeration. One of their main staples was hardtack, a type of biscuit made from flour, water, and sometimes salt. Hardtack was notoriously tough and bland, often requiring soaking in water or rum to make it edible. Pirates would frequently find their hardtack infested with weevils, small beetles that thrived in the damp conditions of ships. Rather than discarding the infested biscuits, pirates would simply tap them on the table to shake out the insects before eating. Another common food item was salted meat, typically beef or pork. The meat was heavily salted to prevent spoilage, which made it extremely tough and salty. Pirates would often have to soak the meat in seawater to make it palatable, a process that could take hours. Fish was also a significant part of the pirate diet, as it was readily available from the sea. However, without proper preservation methods, fish would quickly spoil. To combat this, pirates would often dry or smoke their catch, creating a product similar to modern-day jerky. Fruits and vegetables were rare luxuries on pirate ships. When available, they were quickly consumed to prevent scurvy, a disease caused by vitamin C deficiency. Limes and lemons were particularly prized for their ability to ward off this dreaded ailment. To supplement their diet, pirates would sometimes capture sea turtles. These creatures could be kept alive on the ship for extended periods, providing a source of fresh meat. The fat from sea turtles was also used as a substitute for butter. Drinking water was another challenge for pirates. Fresh water would quickly become stagnant and unpalatable during long voyages. To combat this, pirates often mixed their water with alcohol, typically rum or beer. This practice not only made the water more palatable, but also helped to kill harmful bacteria. The lack of proper nutrition and the constant consumption of salted foods and alcohol often led to various health problems among pirates. Scurvy, tooth decay, and digestive issues were common ailments that plagued these seafaring rogues. In times of extreme scarcity, pirates were known to resort to desperate measures. There are accounts of pirates eating leather from their shoes or belts, and in rare cases, even resorting to cannibalism when faced with starvation. So the next time you romanticize the life of a pirate, remember that their diet was far from enviable. The constant struggle for sustenance and the monotony of their meals were just some of the many hardships these seafaring outlaws had to endure in their pursuit of treasure and adventure on the high seas. As we sail through the murky waters of pirate history, let's drop anchor and explore the surprisingly structured world of pirate governance. Contrary to popular belief, pirates weren't just lawless rogues, they had their own unique system of rules and regulations. The foundation of pirate governance was the Pirate Code, or Articles of Agreement. These were a set of rules that each crew member had to agree to before joining a ship. Think of it as a pirate constitution, if you will. One of the most famous pirate codes was that of Bartholomew Roberts, also known as Black Bart. His articles included rules such as equal division of plunder, compensation for injuries sustained in battle, and even a primitive form of social security for retired pirates. But let's not romanticize this too much. The punishments for breaking these codes were often severe and brutal. Marooning, keel hauling, or even death were common consequences for those who dared to violate the articles. Pirate ships operated on a surprisingly democratic system. The captain was elected by the crew and could be voted out if he failed to meet their expectations. This was a stark contrast to the rigid hierarchy of naval vessels of the time. The quartermaster played a crucial role in pirate governance. He was responsible for maintaining order on the ship, settling disputes among the crew, and overseeing the fair distribution of plunder. In many ways, the quartermaster held more day-to-day power than the captain. Pirates also had their own form of health care. The articles often included provisions for compensating crew members who lost limbs or suffered other injuries during battle. For instance, losing a right arm might entitle a pirate to 600 pieces of eight, while a left arm was worth 500. Interestingly, pirate ships were often more egalitarian than their naval counterparts. African sailors, who were often enslaved or discriminated against on merchant and naval ships, could rise to positions of power on pirate vessels based on their skills and bravery. However, it's important to note that while pirate governance had some progressive elements, it was still a system built on theft, violence, and the threat of death. The romantic image of pirates as freedom-loving rebels is largely a product of later literature and film. As we weigh anchor and prepare to sail on to our next topic, remember that the world of pirate governance was as complex and contradictory as the pirates themselves, a blend of democratic ideals and brutal reality, sailing the thin line between order and chaos on the high seas. As we conclude our exploration of pirate life, it's clear that the romanticized notion of swashbuckling adventure falls short of the harsh reality. The daily existence of a pirate was far from the glamorous tales often portrayed in popular culture. Let's recap some of the key points we've discussed. First, the living conditions aboard pirate ships were abysmal. Cramped quarters, poor sanitation, and the constant presence of rats and other vermin made for an unpleasant environment. The stench of unwashed bodies and rotting food permeated the air, creating a nauseating atmosphere that would be unbearable for most modern individuals. Second, the diet of a pirate was monotonous and often nutritionally deficient. The staple foods were hardtack biscuits, salted meat, and whatever could be preserved for long voyages. Fresh fruits and vegetables were a rarity, leading to widespread malnutrition and diseases like scurvy. Third, the constant threat of violence and death loomed over every pirate. Whether from rival pirates, naval forces, or even their own crewmates, the risk of a violent end was ever present. The romantic notion of honor among thieves was often just that, a notion, with betrayal and mutiny being common occurrences. Fourth, the legal consequences of piracy were severe. Capture by authorities usually meant a swift trial followed by execution, often by hanging. The corpses of executed pirates were frequently displayed as a warning to others, a grim reminder of the price of their chosen profession. Lastly, the psychological toll of this lifestyle cannot be understated. The isolation from society, the moral compromises required to survive, and the constant state of alertness would have been mentally exhausting. Many pirates turned to alcohol as a means of coping, further exacerbating their problems. In conclusion, while the idea of freedom and adventure on the high seas may seem appealing, the reality of pirate life was far from idyllic. It was a harsh, brutal existence that few modern individuals would be able to endure for long. The next time you romanticize the pirate lifestyle, remember the grim realities that lurk beneath the surface of those skull and crossbones flags. As we conclude our exploration of the Aztec warriors' demanding lifestyle, let's shift our focus to another fascinating aspect of ancient civilizations. Our next topic will delve into the intricacies of daily life in medieval Europe, where the challenges were equally daunting, albeit in different ways. Prepare to journey from the sun-soaked temples of Tenochtitlan to the cobblestone streets of a medieval town. As we delve into the grim reality of World War I trench warfare, imagine yourself as a soldier in 1916. The muddy, rat-infested trenches stretch endlessly before you. The constant threat of artillery fire looms overhead, while the acrid smell of gunpowder and decay fills your nostrils. Your uniform, once crisp and clean, is now caked with mud and worse. The weight of your rifle feels heavier with each passing hour. In this hellish landscape, survival isn't just a challenge, it's a daily miracle. Let's explore why you wouldn't last a day as a World War I trench soldier. The trenches of World War I were more than just defensive structures. They were the temporary homes of millions of soldiers. Let's delve into the living conditions these men endured day after day in these muddy, cramped spaces. First, let's consider the physical environment. Trenches were typically about 7 feet deep and 6 feet wide, barely enough room for 2 men to pass each other. The walls were reinforced with sandbags, wooden planks, and whatever materials soldiers could find. The floor was often a quagmire of mud, especially after rain, which was frequent in the European climate. Soldiers would stand on duckboards, wooden planks laid across the trench floor, to keep their feet out of the mud and water. However, these were often insufficient, and trench foot became a common ailment. This painful condition, caused by prolonged exposure to damp, cold conditions, could lead to gangrene and amputation if left untreated. The smell in the trenches was overwhelming. A mix of unwashed bodies, human waste, rotting food, and the ever-present stench of death permeated the air. Proper sanitation was nearly impossible, and latrines were often just buckets or shallow pits. The lack of hygiene led to outbreaks of diseases like dysentery and cholera. Rats were a constant presence, feeding on food scraps and, more gruesomely, on the bodies of fallen soldiers. These rodents could grow to the size of cats and spread disease among the troops. Lice were another plague, infesting clothing and causing trench fever, a debilitating illness that could take a soldier out of action for weeks. Sleep was a luxury in the trenches. Soldiers would catch what rest they could in dugouts carved into the trench walls. These small caves offered some protection from the elements, but were often damp and infested with vermin. Many men slept sitting up or standing, leaning against the trench walls. Food was monotonous and often of poor quality. The main staple was hardtack, a type of biscuit so hard it had to be soaked in water or tea to be edible. Canned meat, usually corned beef known as bully beef, was also common. Hot food was a rarity, as cooking fires could give away positions to the enemy. Despite these harsh conditions, soldiers found ways to cope. They wrote letters home, played cards, and even published trench newspapers. Dark humor became a coping mechanism, with soldiers nicknaming particularly dangerous areas of the front line or making light of their grim situation. The psychological toll of trench warfare was immense. The constant threat of enemy fire, the loss of comrades, and the seemingly endless nature of the conflict led to widespread cases of shell shock, what we now recognize as post-traumatic stress disorder. The romanticized image of trench warfare often glosses over the harsh realities faced by soldiers during World War I. Let's delve into the grim truth of life in the trenches. First, imagine the constant, oppressive presence of mud. It wasn't just a minor inconvenience, it was a relentless enemy. Trenches would fill with water after heavy rains, turning into muddy quagmires that could swallow a man whole. Soldiers often stood knee-deep or even waist-deep in this thick, cold mud for hours on end. The moisture would seep into their boots, leading to a condition known as trench foot. This painful ailment could result in gangrene and even amputation if left untreated. The smell in the trenches was overwhelming and inescapable. A nauseating mix of unwashed bodies, human waste, rotting food, and decaying corpses permeated the air. Soldiers had to eat, sleep, and fight in these putrid conditions day after day. Rats were a constant presence, feeding on discarded food and, more disturbingly, on the bodies of fallen comrades. These rodents grew to enormous sizes, some reportedly as big as cats, and would boldly scurry across sleeping soldiers at night. The threat of enemy fire was ever present. Snipers made it dangerous to even peek over the top of the trench. Artillery barrages could last for days, subjecting soldiers to constant noise and the fear of being buried alive if a shell collapsed their trench. Disease spread rapidly in these unsanitary conditions. Dysentery, typhus, and cholera were common, exacerbated by the lack of proper medical facilities and the difficulty in evacuating the sick and wounded. Sleep was a luxury rarely enjoyed. When soldiers did manage to rest, it was often in cramped, damp dugouts or right in the trench itself, always alert for the next attack or the call to action. The psychological toll was immense. The combination of boredom punctuated by moments of sheer terror, coupled with the constant proximity to death, led to what was then called shell shock, now recognized as a form of post-traumatic stress disorder. Perhaps most haunting was the knowledge that at any moment, officers might order a charge across no man's land. These assaults often resulted in catastrophic casualties for minimal territorial gains, leaving survivors to wonder when their turn would come. As we delve deeper into the harsh realities of trench warfare, we must consider the often overlooked aspects of daily life for soldiers, their diet, and the constant threat of disease. These factors played a crucial role in shaping the experience of those who endured the trenches, and understanding them is key to grasping the full picture of this grueling chapter in military history. Let's begin with the soldier's diet. The nutritional needs of men engaged in such physically demanding and stressful conditions were immense, yet the food provided was often far from adequate. The typical daily ration for a British soldier in the trenches consisted of about 4,000 calories, which sounds substantial until you consider the intense physical labor and constant state of alertness required. The staple of their diet was hardtack, a type of biscuit made from flour, water, and sometimes salt. These biscuits were notoriously hard and unappetizing, often requiring soldiers to soak them in tea or water to make them edible. Bully beef, a type of canned corned beef, was another common item. While it provided protein, it was often tough and unpalatable. Fresh fruits and vegetables were a rarity, leading to vitamin deficiencies among the troops. When available, soldiers might receive small amounts of jam, cheese, or bacon to supplement their meals. Tea was a crucial component of the British soldiers' diet, providing both hydration and a small sense of comfort amidst the chaos. The monotony of this diet took a toll on morale, and soldiers often looked forward to care packages from home that might contain treats like chocolate or biscuits. However, these luxuries were few and far between, and the majority of meals were bland, repetitive, and barely sufficient to maintain the energy levels required for trench warfare. Turning our attention to disease, the cramped and unsanitary conditions of trench life created a perfect breeding ground for various illnesses. One of the most common afflictions was trench foot, a painful condition caused by prolonged exposure to cold and damp conditions. Soldiers' feet would become numb, swollen, and in severe cases, gangrenous, potentially leading to amputation. Lice infestations were another constant torment. These parasites spread quickly in the crowded trenches, causing intense itching and discomfort. More alarmingly, they were carriers of trench fever, a debilitating illness that could incapacitate soldiers for weeks. Dysentery and typhoid fever, spread through contaminated water and poor sanitation, were rampant. These diseases caused severe dehydration and weakness, further compromising the already fragile health of the troops. The Spanish flu pandemic of 1918 also took a devastating toll on soldiers, whose immune systems were already weakened by the harsh conditions and poor nutrition. In this environment, even minor wounds could become life-threatening due to the risk of infection. The lack of proper medical facilities and the difficulty of evacuating injured soldiers often meant that simple cuts or abrasions could lead to severe complications if left untreated. The psychological toll of trench warfare during World War I was immense and often overlooked. Soldiers spent days, weeks, and even months in cramped, muddy trenches, constantly on edge and fearing for their lives. The constant threat of enemy fire, artillery bombardments, and gas attacks created an atmosphere of perpetual anxiety. Many soldiers developed what was then called shell shock, now recognized as a form of post-traumatic stress disorder. The trenches themselves were breeding grounds for disease and parasites. Rats, lice, and other vermin were constant companions, adding to the soldiers' discomfort and stress. The smell of decay and unwashed bodies permeated the air, a constant reminder of the grim reality they faced. Sleep deprivation was another significant issue. Soldiers often had to remain vigilant during long night watches, and even when off duty, the noise of artillery and the fear of surprise attacks made restful sleep nearly impossible. The monotony of trench life was punctuated by moments of sheer terror during attacks or raids. This constant cycle of boredom and intense fear took a heavy toll on the soldiers' mental health. Many men struggled with feelings of helplessness and futility. The seeming lack of progress in the war, despite the enormous casualties, led to a sense of despair and questioning of the war's purpose. Soldiers also grappled with survivors' guilt, having witnessed the deaths of comrades and friends. The randomness of who lived and who died in artillery barrages or attacks added to the psychological burden. Letters from home, while providing a lifeline to normalcy, often increased feelings of homesickness and isolation. The stark contrast between life in the trenches and the world they left behind was a constant source of emotional distress. The use of chemical weapons, particularly poison gas, introduced a new level of terror. The fear of an invisible, painful death haunted many soldiers, even when gas wasn't being used. Coping mechanisms varied among soldiers. Some turned to gallows humor, developing a dark sense of comedy to deal with their situation. Others found solace in comradeship, forming close bonds with their fellow soldiers. The psychological impact of trench warfare extended far beyond the war itself. Many veterans struggled to reintegrate into civilian life, haunted by their experiences and forever changed by the horrors they had witnessed in the muddy, bloody trenches of the Western Front. As we conclude our exploration of the life of a World War I soldier, it's clear that their existence was far from glamorous or heroic in the traditional sense. The daily struggles, constant fear, and overwhelming hardships paint a picture of endurance rather than glory. The trenches, once thought to be a temporary solution, became a hellish home for millions. Soldiers lived in these muddy, disease-ridden ditches for months on end, their world reduced to a few feet of damp earth and the constant threat of enemy fire. The psychological toll of this environment cannot be overstated. Disease was as much an enemy as the opposing forces. Trench foot, a painful condition caused by prolonged exposure to damp, unsanitary conditions, was rampant. Many soldiers lost toes or entire feet to this affliction. Lice infestations were ubiquitous, causing constant discomfort and spreading typhus among the troops. The advent of new weaponry like machine guns, poison gas, and tanks made the battlefield even more lethal. Soldiers faced weapons that could kill en masse, often without warning. The use of chlorine and mustard gas left many with lifelong respiratory issues or blindness if they survived at all. Food was often scarce and of poor quality. Soldiers subsisted on monotonous diets of canned goods, hard biscuits, and whatever they could scrounge from their surroundings. Clean water was a luxury, and many fell ill from contaminated sources. Perhaps most challenging was the constant state of alertness required. At any moment, an enemy attack could commence, forcing soldiers into action regardless of their physical or mental state. This perpetual stress led to widespread cases of shell shock, now recognized as post-traumatic stress disorder. In the end, the average World War I soldier was not defined by grand battles or heroic charges, but by their ability to endure unimaginable hardships day after day. Their resilience in the face of such adversity is a testament to human endurance, reminding us of the true cost of war beyond the statistics and battle lines drawn on maps. As we conclude our exploration of the Aztec warriors' demanding life, we turn our attention to another fascinating aspect of ancient civilizations. Our next topic delves into the intricacies of daily life in ancient Egypt, where the scorching sun and the life-giving Nile shaped a unique society. Let's journey back in time to the land of pharaohs and pyramids. As we journey through time, let's explore the life of a Silk Road merchant. Imagine traversing vast deserts and treacherous mountain passes, all for the sake of trade. These intrepid travelers carried precious goods like silk, spices, and jewels across continents, connecting distant cultures. Their caravans faced numerous dangers, bandits, harsh weather, and unpredictable terrain. Yet the promise of immense wealth and adventure drove them onward. The Silk Road wasn't just a trade route. It was a conduit for ideas, technologies, and cultural exchange that shaped the ancient world. As we journey through the annals of history, let's turn our attention to the perils faced by those who traversed ancient trade routes. The life of a caravan trader was far from the romanticized tales of adventure we might imagine. Instead, it was fraught with danger at every turn. Imagine, if you will, a long line of camels and traders stretching across the horizon, their silhouettes stark against the setting sun. These caravans were the lifeblood of ancient commerce, carrying precious goods across vast distances, but with great profit came great risk. One of the most immediate threats to caravan traders was the unforgiving landscape itself. Vast deserts, treacherous mountain passes, and unpredictable weather patterns all conspired against these intrepid merchants. The searing heat of day could quickly give way to bone-chilling cold at night, testing the limits of human endurance. Water, or rather the lack thereof, was a constant concern. Miscalculating the distance between oases could spell doom for an entire caravan. Many a trader met their end parched and delirious, having strayed too far from reliable water sources. But nature wasn't the only threat. Human predators lurked along well-traveled routes, waiting to pounce on unsuspecting caravans. Bandits and highwaymen saw these merchant trains as lucrative targets, often employing brutal tactics to separate traders from their valuable wares. Some of these brigands were opportunistic locals, while others were organized groups that terrorized specific regions. The Silk Road, for instance, was notorious for its danger, with entire armies sometimes descending upon caravans, leaving devastation in their wake. Traders also had to contend with the political landscape of the territories they traversed. Crossing borders often meant navigating complex systems of tariffs, bribes, and local customs. A misstep in diplomacy could result in confiscation of goods, imprisonment, or worse. Disease was another ever-present danger. Close quarters, poor sanitation, and exposure to new pathogens in foreign lands made caravans potential hotbeds for illness. A single infected individual could quickly spread disease throughout the entire group, sometimes with fatal consequences. Yet despite these myriad dangers, caravan trade persisted for centuries. The allure of profit and the necessity of exchange drove countless individuals to risk life and limb on these perilous journeys. Their bravery and perseverance laid the foundation for the global trade networks we enjoy today, a testament to the indomitable spirit of human commerce. As we continue our journey through history's most challenging environments, let's turn our attention to the unforgiving landscape of the desert. Imagine yourself as an ancient traveler, faced with the daunting task of surviving in one of Earth's most extreme habitats. The desert, a vast expanse of sand and rock, presents a unique set of challenges that would quickly overwhelm the unprepared modern individual. The first and most pressing concern is, of course, water. In the scorching heat of the day, where temperatures can easily soar above 120 degrees Fahrenheit, your body would rapidly lose moisture through sweat. Ancient desert dwellers developed ingenious methods to find and conserve water. They learned to read the landscape, identifying subtle signs of underground water sources. Certain plants, like the barrel cactus, could be carefully cut open to access their moisture-rich flesh. However, without this specialized knowledge, you'd likely succumb to dehydration within a matter of days. The extreme temperature fluctuations would pose another significant challenge. While daytime temperatures are brutally hot, nights in the desert can be surprisingly cold. Without proper shelter or clothing, you'd be at risk of hypothermia during the chilly nights, only to face the threat of heat stroke as the sun rises. Food would be another constant concern. The desert may seem barren, but it's home to a variety of edible plants and animals. Ancient desert inhabitants knew which plants were safe to eat and how to trap small game. They also understood the importance of conserving energy during the hottest parts of the day, often traveling at night or in the early morning. Navigation would prove to be a formidable challenge. Without modern GPS or even a compass, you'd need to rely on the sun, stars, and natural landmarks to find your way. The vast, featureless expanses of sand dunes could easily disorient even experienced travelers. Ancient desert dwellers developed a deep understanding of wind patterns and sand dune formation, skills that took generations to perfect. They could read the subtle changes in sand texture and color to predict weather patterns and find their way across seemingly identical landscapes. The constant exposure to sand would pose its own set of problems. Sand would work its way into your clothing, eyes, and even your food. Over time, it could cause painful skin abrasions and eye irritation. Ancient desert inhabitants developed specialized clothing and face coverings to protect themselves from these issues. In the face of these challenges, it becomes clear that surviving in the desert required a lifetime of specialized knowledge and skills. Without this expertise, passed down through generations, your chances of lasting more than a few days in this harsh environment would be slim at best. The Aztec Empire, known for its military prowess, was equally adept at the art of trade and commerce. Let's delve into the intricate world of Aztec trade negotiations, a process that was as complex as it was crucial to the empire's economy. Aztec merchants, known as Pachteca, were highly respected members of society. They were not just traders, but also acted as diplomats and spies for the empire. These skilled negotiators would embark on long, perilous journeys to distant lands, carrying luxury goods and returning with exotic treasures. Trade negotiations often began with a formal exchange of gifts. The Aztecs believed that generosity would foster goodwill and pave the way for successful deals. Merchants would present items such as fine textiles, jade ornaments, or even rare feathers to their potential trading partners. The actual negotiation process was a delicate dance of words and gestures. Aztec merchants were trained in the art of persuasion from a young age, learning to read body language and adapt their approach accordingly. They would often employ metaphors and poetic language, a reflection of the Aztecs' love for eloquent speech. One fascinating aspect of Aztec trade negotiations was the use of a standardized system of measurement. The Aztecs employed a variety of units, including the quatli for length, which was roughly equivalent to the span of a man's arms, and the tilapali for volume, measured using gourds of different sizes. Price negotiations were equally intricate. The Aztecs didn't use currency as we know it today. Instead, they relied on a complex barter system, with certain goods serving as a form of standardized exchange. Cacao beans, for instance, were often used as a form of currency, with 100 beans equating to one good cotton mantle. Interestingly, the Aztecs had a unique approach to market regulation. The government would set base prices for essential goods to prevent price gouging. However, luxury items were subject to free market principles, with prices fluctuating based on supply and demand. Trade negotiations weren't just about exchanging goods, they also served as a means of gathering intelligence. Merchants would report back to the emperor about the military strength, resources, and political climate of the regions they visited. This information was crucial for the empire's expansion strategies. The success of a trade negotiation was often celebrated with a feast, where both parties would share food and drink. This communal meal was seen as a way to solidify the agreement and foster long-term relationships between trading partners. As we drift off to sleep, imagine the bustling marketplaces of Tenochtitlan, filled with the sounds of haggling merchants and the sight of exotic goods from far-off lands. The complex world of Aztec trade negotiations serves as a testament to the sophistication of this ancient civilization, reminding us that commerce has always been a fundamental aspect of human interaction. As we delve deeper into the world of the Aztec warrior, it's important to understand the cultural exchange that occurred between the Aztecs and other Mesoamerican civilizations. This exchange wasn't always peaceful, but it did lead to a rich tapestry of shared traditions and knowledge. The Aztecs, despite their fearsome reputation, were not isolated from their neighbors. They engaged in trade, diplomacy, and yes, warfare with surrounding city-states and empires. This constant interaction led to a flow of ideas, technologies, and cultural practices across the region. One of the most significant areas of exchange was in agriculture. The Aztecs were master farmers, and their innovative techniques, such as the creation of chinempas or floating gardens, spread to other parts of Mesoamerica. These artificial islands, built in shallow lake beds, allowed for year-round crop production and helped support the large population of Tenochtitlan. In return, the Aztecs adopted crops and farming methods from other cultures. Maize, or corn, which was originally domesticated in southern Mexico, became a staple of the Aztec diet. They also incorporated squash and beans, forming the nutritious trio known as the Three Sisters in many Mesoamerican cuisines. The exchange of religious ideas was another crucial aspect of this cultural intermingling. The Aztec pantheon of gods was vast and complex, incorporating deities from conquered peoples. This practice helped to legitimize Aztec rule over subjugated territories and created a diverse religious landscape. For instance, the feathered serpent god Quetzalcoatl, worshipped by the Aztecs, had roots in earlier Mesoamerican cultures like the Olmecs and Toltecs. The Aztecs adopted and adapted this deity, making it an integral part of their own religious narrative. Language was another area of significant exchange. Nahuatl, the language of the Aztecs, became a lingua franca across much of central Mexico. Many Nahuatl words have survived to this day and have even made their way into English. Words like chocolate, tomato, and avocado all have Nahuatl origins. The Aztecs were also great patrons of the arts, and their aesthetic sensibilities influenced neighboring cultures. The intricate stone carvings, colorful murals, and elaborate featherwork of the Aztecs were admired and emulated throughout the region. This cultural exchange wasn't limited to ideas and practices. Physical goods also flowed across Mesoamerica through extensive trade networks. Luxury items like jade, obsidian, and colorful feathers were highly prized and traded over long distances. As an Aztec warrior, you would have been both a participant in and a witness to this rich cultural tapestry. Your weapons might have been crafted from obsidian traded from distant quarries, while your armor could have been adorned with feathers from tropical birds of far-off lands. As we conclude our journey along the Silk Road, it's clear that the life of a merchant in this era was far from the romanticized tales we often hear. The constant threat of bandits, treacherous terrain, and unpredictable weather made each voyage a gamble with one's life and fortune. Let's recap some of the challenges these intrepid traders faced. First, the sheer distance covered was staggering. A round trip could take years, with merchants often traveling over 4,000 miles each way. The physical toll on both humans and animals was immense, with many succumbing to exhaustion or illness along the way. Then there was the ever-present danger of theft. Caravans were prime targets for bandits who knew the value of the silks, spices, and other precious goods being transported. Merchants had to hire armed guards or join larger caravans for protection, cutting into their potential profits. The harsh environments posed another significant obstacle. Traders had to navigate scorching deserts, treacherous mountain passes, and frigid steppes. Each terrain brought its own set of challenges, from sandstorms and extreme heat to avalanches and frostbite. Political instability along the route added another layer of complexity. Merchants had to navigate changing borders, obtain proper documentation, and pay various tolls and taxes. Sometimes, entire sections of the route would become impassable due to wars or local conflicts. Disease was another constant companion on the Silk Road. The close quarters of caravans and the various foreign environments exposed travelers to a wide array of illnesses. Many merchants fell victim to diseases they had no immunity against, never making it back home to enjoy their hard-earned wealth. Finally, the financial risks were enormous. A single unsuccessful journey could bankrupt a merchant and their family. The volatility of markets in distant lands meant that goods highly valued in one place might be worth far less at the final destination. In the end, while some merchants did amass great fortunes, many others lost everything in pursuit of wealth on the Silk Road. The allure of exotic goods and the promise of riches came at a steep price, one that most modern individuals would find difficult, if not impossible, to pay. As we conclude our exploration of the Aztec warriors' rigorous lifestyle, we transition to another fascinating historical topic. In our next segment, we'll delve into the intricacies of medieval European castle life. From the towering stone walls to the daily routines of nobles and servants alike, prepare to journey back in time to an era of lords, ladies, and elaborate fortifications. We transition from the rigors of Aztec warfare. Let's shift our focus to the equally demanding world of Renaissance artistry. While not as physically perilous, the life of a Renaissance artist was fraught with its own unique challenges and pressures. Imagine yourself in 15th century Florence, surrounded by the burgeoning brilliance of masters like Leonardo da Vinci and Michelangelo. The air is thick with the scent of oil paints and marble dust, and the weight of patron expectations hangs heavy. But before we delve into the daily grind of these artistic pioneers, let's consider why you, a modern individual, might struggle to adapt to their world. As we delve deeper into the life of an Aztec warrior, let's explore the reality of their apprenticeship. The journey to becoming a formidable eagle or jaguar warrior was far from glamorous, and you'd likely find yourself struggling to meet the intense demands placed upon you. From a young age, typically around 15, you'd be sent to a military school known as the Tolpachkali. Here, your life would revolve entirely around martial training and religious education. The days would be long, grueling, and filled with constant physical exertion. Your mornings would begin before dawn with rigorous exercises designed to build strength and endurance. You'd run for miles, carrying heavy loads to develop your stamina. The tropical heat of Tenochtitlan would beat down on you mercilessly, but there would be no respite. After physical training, you'd spend hours practicing with weapons. The macuahuitl, a wooden sword embedded with obsidian blades, would become an extension of your arm. You'd learn to wield it with deadly precision, but not without suffering numerous cuts and injuries in the process. Your evenings would be dedicated to religious instruction and rituals. You'd be expected to memorize complex prayers and participate in ceremonies honoring the Aztec gods. Failure to do so could result in harsh punishments, as spiritual devotion was considered just as important as martial prowess. Sleep would be a luxury, often interrupted by night drills or surprise attacks designed to keep you constantly alert. You'd learn to function on minimal rest, always ready for battle at a moment's notice. The food provided during your apprenticeship would be basic and limited. You'd be expected to fast regularly as part of your spiritual training, pushing your body to its limits. The constant hunger pangs would be a reminder of the sacrifices required to become an elite warrior. Your social life would be virtually non-existent. Contact with family and friends would be severely restricted, as the goal was to forge you into a dedicated servant of the Aztec state. Your fellow apprentices would become your new family, bonded through shared hardships and challenges. As you progressed in your training, you'd be expected to participate in minor skirmishes and raids. These experiences would be your first taste of real combat, and the reality of warfare would likely be far more terrifying than you had imagined. The psychological toll of this intense apprenticeship would be immense. Many young warriors in training couldn't handle the pressure and would drop out or be expelled. Those who persevered would emerge as hardened, disciplined fighters, but at a great personal cost. The Aztec civilization was renowned for its vibrant and colorful art, which adorned everything from codices to murals. But have you ever wondered how they created such vivid pigments? Let's delve into the meticulous process of pigment preparation in the Aztec world. Aztec artists and craftsmen were masters at extracting colors from various natural sources. One of the most prized pigments was cochineal red, derived from tiny insects that lived on prickly pear cacti. The process of harvesting these insects was incredibly labor-intensive. Workers would carefully brush the insects off the cacti, collecting them in baskets. The insects were then dried in the sun or in ovens before being ground into a fine powder. This powder was mixed with water and other substances to create different shades of red, from bright scarlet to deep crimson. Another important pigment was Maya blue, a unique color that has fascinated scientists for centuries due to its remarkable durability. This pigment was created by combining indigo, extracted from the leaves of the annel plant, with a special type of clay called palygorskite. The mixture was heated, causing a chemical reaction that produced the distinctive blue color. The exact process was a closely guarded secret, passed down through generations of artisans. Yellow pigments were often derived from ochre, a natural clay containing iron oxide. The clay was mined, dried, and ground into a fine powder. Different shades of yellow could be achieved by varying the heating process or mixing the ochre with other substances. Green pigments were typically created from malachite, a copper carbonate mineral. The stone was crushed and ground into a fine powder, then mixed with various binders to create paint. The Aztecs also used a green pigment made from the leaves of the huzash tree, which produced a more olive-toned hue. Black was an essential color in Aztec art and writing. It was often made from soot or charcoal, collected from burning pine wood or other resinous trees. The soot was carefully gathered and mixed with binders to create a deep, rich black pigment. The preparation of these pigments was not just a practical task, but also a spiritual one. Many Aztec artisans believed that the colors themselves possessed divine qualities, and the act of creating pigments was seen as a form of communion with the gods. This meticulous attention to detail in pigment preparation allowed Aztec artists to create works of stunning beauty and complexity, many of which have survived to this day, testament to the skill and dedication of these ancient craftsmen. In the complex social structure of Aztec society, patron relationships played a crucial role, particularly for warriors. These relationships were not just about mentorship, but also about social mobility and political power. At the heart of these relationships was the concept of the Taxation, which roughly translates to nephew or younger brother. This term was used to describe the relationship between a seasoned warrior and his protege. Experienced warriors, often from noble families, would take younger warriors under their wing. This wasn't just a casual arrangement, it was a formalized system that had significant implications for both parties involved. For the younger warrior, having a powerful patron meant access to better training, equipment, and opportunities for advancement. It was a fast track to climbing the social ladder in Aztec society. The patron, in turn, gained loyal followers who would support him in battle and in political matters. This system helped to reinforce the hierarchical structure of Aztec society while also providing a mechanism for talented individuals to rise through the ranks. However, these relationships came with high expectations and responsibilities. The younger warrior was expected to show unwavering loyalty and to perform exceptionally in battle. Failure to do so could not only end the patronage, but could also result in severe punishment or social ostracism. Patrons, on the other hand, were responsible for the actions of their proteges. If a young warrior under their protection committed a serious offense or showed cowardice in battle, it could reflect poorly on the patron and damage their reputation. These patron relationships extended beyond just military matters. They often involved complex social obligations, including participation in religious ceremonies and political events. Patrons might be expected to provide for their proteges' families or to speak on their behalf in legal matters. The system also served as a way to integrate captured warriors from other city-states into Aztec society. By assigning them to powerful patrons, the Aztecs could ensure loyalty and potentially gain valuable military expertise from their former enemies. As an Aztec warrior, navigating these patron relationships would have been a critical skill. Your success in battle, your social standing, and even your survival could depend on your ability to secure and maintain the right patronage. As we delve deeper into the intricate social structure of Aztec society, we find ourselves exploring the curious position of artists within their hierarchical system. While the Aztec civilization is often remembered for its fierce warriors and grand temples, the role of artists was surprisingly complex and at times paradoxical. In Aztec society, artists known as Tolteca and Nahuatl were generally held in high regard. Their skills were seen as gifts from the gods, particularly from Quetzalcoatl, the deity associated with arts and crafts. This divine connection lent a certain prestige to their profession, setting them apart from ordinary craftsmen. However, the social status of artists was not uniformly elevated. Their position often depended on the specific art form they practiced and their patrons. For instance, featherworkers who created intricate designs using exotic bird feathers were among the most respected. Their creations adorned the regalia of nobility and were used in religious ceremonies, placing them in close proximity to the upper echelons of society. Sculptors and painters also enjoyed a relatively high status, especially those commissioned to create works for temples or palaces. Their ability to capture the likeness of gods and rulers was seen as a form of magic, further elevating their importance in Aztec culture. On the other hand, some artists, particularly those working with more common materials like clay or wood, might have held a lower social standing. Their work, while still valued, was not as closely associated with the divine or the elite. Interestingly, many Aztec artists were also warriors. This dual role was not uncommon in their society, where military service was highly valued. An artist might be called upon to fight in battles, and their artistic skills could even be applied to creating war regalia or commemorative sculptures of victories. The education of artists was taken seriously in Aztec society. Young, talented individuals were often sent to special schools called comicac, where they received rigorous training in their chosen art form, alongside religious and military instruction. This comprehensive education further underscores the multifaceted role of artists in Aztec culture. Despite their generally respected position, artists were not exempt from the strict social hierarchies of Aztec society. They were still subject to sumptuary laws that dictated what they could wear and own based on their social rank. An artist, no matter how skilled, could not dress or live like a noble unless specifically granted that privilege by the ruler. In conclusion, the social status of Aztec artists was a complex interplay of religious significance, practical skill, and societal norms. While their talents were widely appreciated and often seen as divinely inspired, their exact standing in society could vary greatly depending on their specific craft and patronage. This nuanced position reflects the intricate and sometimes contradictory nature of Aztec social structure, where even those blessed with artistic gifts navigated a carefully stratified society. As we conclude our exploration of life as a Renaissance artist, it's clear that while the period was marked by great artistic achievements, the daily reality for most artists was far from glamorous. The romantic notion of the lone genius creating masterpieces in a sunlit studio is largely a modern invention. In truth, Renaissance artists faced numerous challenges. The constant struggle for patronage meant that many talented individuals spent more time networking and seeking commissions than actually creating art. Those fortunate enough to secure steady work often found themselves at the mercy of demanding patrons with specific expectations and tight deadlines. The physical toll of artistic work during this era cannot be overstated. Long hours hunched over canvases or chiseling marble in poorly lit workshops led to chronic health issues for many artists. The use of toxic materials like lead-based paints and mercury for gilding posed serious risks to their well-being, often resulting in shortened lifespans. Moreover, the hierarchical structure of artistic guilds meant that many aspiring artists spent years as apprentices, performing menial tasks and learning their craft before they could hope to make a name for themselves. This system, while effective for passing down techniques, also stifled individual creativity and innovation to some extent. Financial instability was a constant concern for all but the most successful artists. Many lived modestly, barely able to support themselves and their families through their craft alone. It wasn't uncommon for artists to supplement their income with other trades or to rely on the support of wealthy patrons for basic necessities. Despite these hardships, the Renaissance period produced some of the most enduring and influential works of art in human history. The dedication and perseverance of these artists in the face of numerous obstacles is a testament to their passion and skill. Their legacy continues to inspire and captivate us centuries later, reminding us of the power of human creativity and the enduring impact of art on our culture and society. As we drift off to sleep, let's appreciate the complex reality behind the masterpieces we admire, and the very human struggles and triumphs of those who created them in a time so different from our own. As we conclude our exploration of the Aztec warriors' rigorous lifestyle, let's shift our focus to another fascinating aspect of ancient civilization. In our next segment, we'll delve into the intricacies of daily life in ancient Egypt, examining the routines and challenges faced by ordinary citizens along the Nile River. Prepare to journey back in time to the land of pharaohs and pyramids. As we shift our focus to the era of colonial settlement, imagine yourself transported back in time to the rugged frontiers of North America. The year is 1620, and you've just disembarked from the Mayflower onto the shores of what will become Massachusetts. The air is crisp, filled with the scent of pine and salt spray. Before you lies a vast, untamed wilderness, promising both opportunity and peril. Little do you know, the challenges that await will test every fiber of your being. From harsh winters to unfamiliar diseases, let's explore why you, a modern person, might not survive a single day as a colonial settler. As we delve deeper into the annals of history, let's explore a topic that might just lull you into a peaceful slumber: the challenges of surviving the first winter in early colonial settlements. This seemingly mundane subject is actually filled with fascinating details that highlight the resilience of our ancestors. In the early 17th century, European settlers arriving in North America faced a daunting task: surviving their first winter in an unfamiliar and often harsh environment. The challenges they encountered were numerous and varied, ranging from inadequate shelter to unfamiliar diseases. One of the primary obstacles these early colonists faced was the construction of suitable housing. Many arrived too late in the season to build proper structures before the onset of winter. As a result, they were forced to endure the cold months in hastily constructed shelters, often little more than rough wooden huts or even caves dug into hillsides. These makeshift dwellings provided minimal protection against the elements, leaving settlers vulnerable to the biting cold and damp conditions. The lack of proper insulation and ventilation led to a host of health issues, including respiratory problems and frostbite. Food scarcity was another significant challenge. Many settlers arrived with limited supplies, expecting to supplement their stores with local crops and game. However, their lack of familiarity with the new environment often led to poor agricultural yields and unsuccessful hunting expeditions. The colonists' European farming techniques were ill-suited to the North American climate and soil conditions. Crops that thrived in their homeland often failed to produce in the New World, leading to disappointing harvests and dwindling food supplies as winter progressed. Furthermore, the settlers' unfamiliarity with local flora and fauna sometimes led to tragic consequences. Misidentification of plants resulted in the consumption of poisonous species, while encounters with unfamiliar animals occasionally proved fatal. Disease was yet another formidable foe during that first winter. The combination of malnutrition, close quarters, and poor sanitation created ideal conditions for the spread of illnesses. Common ailments such as influenza and dysentery could quickly become life-threatening in these circumstances. The lack of medical knowledge and supplies further compounded these health issues. Many settlements were without trained physicians, relying instead on folk remedies and limited medical texts brought from Europe. Despite these numerous challenges, many early colonial settlements managed to survive their first winter, though often at great cost. The experiences of these pioneers laid the groundwork for future waves of settlers who benefited from the hard-won knowledge of their predecessors. As we conclude this segment on first winter survival in early colonial settlements, we're reminded of the incredible resilience and adaptability of those who came before us. Their struggles and perseverance in the face of seemingly insurmountable odds shaped the course of history, leaving an indelible mark on the nations they helped to build. As we journey through the annals of history, let's turn our attention to the humble abodes of those who ventured into the untamed wilderness of early America. The frontier housing of the 18th and 19th centuries was a far cry from the comfortable dwellings we know today. Imagine, if you will, a small, crude structure made primarily of logs. These log cabins were the quintessential frontier homes, born out of necessity and crafted with limited resources. The process of building such a dwelling was arduous and time-consuming, often taking weeks or even months to complete. The first step in constructing a frontier home was selecting an appropriate site. Settlers would look for level ground near a water source, preferably with a natural clearing to reduce the amount of tree felling required. Once the location was chosen, the laborious task of cutting and preparing logs began. Trees were felled using axes and crosscut saws, then stripped of their bark and cut to the desired length. The logs were then notched at the ends to allow them to fit snugly together when stacked. This interlocking system, known as corner timbering, provided stability to the structure without the need for nails or other fasteners, which were often in short supply on the frontier. As the walls rose, gaps between the logs were filled with a mixture of mud, moss, and small stones, a process called chinking. This crude insulation helped keep out drafts and insects, though it was far from perfect. The roof was typically made of wooden shakes or shingles, sometimes covered with sod for additional insulation in colder climates. Windows, if present at all, were small and few in number. Glass was a luxury item. So many frontier homes had to make do with old paper or animal hides stretched across the openings to let in light while keeping out the elements. Doors were often made of split logs held together with wooden pegs or rawhide bindings. Inside these modest dwellings, comfort was scarce. Floors were frequently bare earth, perhaps covered with straw or rushes. In more established settlements, rough-hewn wooden planks might serve as flooring. A large fireplace, usually built of stone or clay, dominated one wall, serving as the primary source of heat and the center of cooking activities. Furniture was sparse and utilitarian. A table and a few chairs or stools, a bed or sleeping platform, and perhaps a chest for storing clothing and valuables were often the extent of a frontier family's possessions. Many items served multiple purposes to maximize the limited space available. As settlements grew and resources became more readily available, frontier housing evolved. Frame houses built with sawn lumber began to replace log cabins, offering more space and comfort. However, the simple log cabin remained an enduring symbol of American pioneer spirit and self-reliance, a testament to the ingenuity and perseverance of those who tamed the wilderness. As we delve deeper into the annals of history, let us turn our attention to the often overlooked yet crucial aspect of colonial life, agriculture. The cultivation of crops and management of livestock played a pivotal role in shaping the economic and social structures of colonial societies across the globe. In the British North American colonies, agriculture was the backbone of the economy. The fertile soils of the Chesapeake region, encompassing Virginia and Maryland, proved ideal for tobacco cultivation. This labor-intensive crop became the primary export and source of wealth for these colonies, leading to the establishment of large plantations and, unfortunately, the increased reliance on enslaved labor. Further north in New England, the rocky soil and harsher climate necessitated a different approach. Farmers here focused on subsistence agriculture, growing crops like corn, beans, and squash, often referred to as the Three Sisters due to their complementary growing patterns. They also raised livestock such as cattle, pigs, and sheep, which provided both food and raw materials for local industries. In the Spanish colonies of Central and South America, the encomienda system was implemented. This feudal-like structure granted Spanish colonists control over indigenous labor and land. The primary crops cultivated under the system included sugar cane, cacao, and indigo. These cash crops were exported to Europe, fueling the growing demand for luxury goods and contributing to the economic exploitation of the New World. The Portuguese in their Brazilian colony initially focused on extracting Brazil wood, a valuable source of red dye. However, by the mid-16th century, they had established a thriving sugar cane industry. The humid coastal regions of Brazil proved ideal for sugar cultivation, leading to the creation of large sugar plantations known as engenhos. In the French colonies, particularly in the Caribbean, sugar cane also became the dominant crop. Islands like Saint-Domingue, now known as Haiti, became incredibly profitable due to their sugar production. However, this economic success came at a terrible human cost, with the brutal exploitation of enslaved Africans on these plantations. It's worth noting that colonial agriculture wasn't solely about European crops. Many indigenous plants were adopted and cultivated by colonists. Potatoes, originally from the Andes, became a staple crop in Europe after being introduced by Spanish conquistadors. Similarly, maize or corn, native to the Americas, was widely adopted in Africa and parts of Asia. The agricultural practices of the colonial era had far-reaching consequences, shaping not only the economies of the colonies but also global trade patterns. The demand for colonial agricultural products fueled the triangular trade between Europe, Africa, and the Americas, contributing to the tragic expansion of the transatlantic slave trade. As we reflect on colonial agriculture, we must acknowledge its complex legacy. While it led to significant economic growth and the exchange of crops across continents, it also resulted in environmental changes, the displacement of indigenous peoples, and the exploitation of enslaved laborers. These agricultural systems laid the foundation for many of the economic and social structures that would persist long after the colonial era had ended. As we delve into the world of Aztec warriors, it's crucial to understand the role that disease and medicine played in their lives. The Aztec civilization, like many ancient societies, faced numerous health challenges, but they also developed sophisticated medical practices to combat these issues. One of the most common ailments that plagued Aztec warriors was dysentery, a severe form of diarrhea often caused by contaminated water or food. This condition could quickly debilitate even the strongest warriors, leaving them weak and unable to fight. The Aztecs treated dysentery with a combination of herbal remedies, including the use of guava leaves, which are known for their astringent properties. Malaria was another significant threat to Aztec warriors, especially those fighting in lowland areas where mosquitoes thrived. The symptoms of fever, chills, and fatigue could render a warrior useless in battle. Aztec healers used the bark of the ahuhuit tree, which contains quinine-like compounds, to treat malarial symptoms. Injuries sustained in battle were a constant concern for Aztec warriors. Wounds from obsidian-edged weapons could be particularly severe and prone to infection. To address this, Aztec medicine men developed advanced wound care techniques, including the use of poultices made from medicinal plants like marigold and agave. The Aztecs also faced the threat of tetanus, which could easily set in after battlefield injuries. They recognized the symptoms and attempted to treat it with a combination of herbal remedies and ritualistic practices, though the effectiveness of these treatments was limited. Interestingly, the Aztecs had a relatively advanced understanding of human anatomy, thanks in part to their practice of human sacrifice. This knowledge allowed their healers to develop surgical techniques that were quite sophisticated for their time, including the ability to set broken bones and even perform basic cranial surgeries. Mental health was not overlooked in Aztec medicine. Warriors suffering from what we might now recognize as post-traumatic stress disorder were treated with a combination of herbal remedies, such as peyote, and spiritual rituals aimed at cleansing the mind and spirit. Despite these advancements, the arrival of European diseases like smallpox devastated the Aztec population, including their warriors. The Aztecs had no immunity to these new illnesses, and their traditional medicines were ineffective against them. This vulnerability to disease played a significant role in the eventual downfall of the Aztec Empire. In conclusion, while Aztec warriors were formidable on the battlefield, they were not invincible to the ravages of disease and injury. Their medical practices, though advanced for their time, could only do so much to protect them from the harsh realities of ancient warfare and the invisible enemies that lurked in their environment. As we conclude our exploration of colonial settler life, it's clear that the challenges faced by these early pioneers were far more daunting than many of us might imagine. The harsh realities of their daily existence serve as a stark reminder of how much our world has changed in just a few centuries. The settlers' lives were marked by constant struggle against the elements, disease, and the ever-present threat of conflict. Their days were filled with backbreaking labor from dawn to dusk just to maintain a basic level of subsistence. The comforts we take for granted today, electricity, running water, readily available food, were unimaginable luxuries to these hardy individuals. Perhaps one of the most striking aspects of colonial life was the isolation. Communication with the outside world was slow and unreliable, often taking months for news to travel between the colonies and their European homelands. This isolation fostered a sense of self-reliance and community interdependence that shaped the character of early American society. The role of women in colonial settlements was particularly demanding. Not only were they expected to manage households and raise children, but they also often had to step into traditionally male roles when circumstances demanded. their contributions to the survival and growth of these fledgling communities cannot be overstated. It's worth noting that while we've focused on the hardships, there were also moments of joy and triumph in colonial life. The sense of accomplishment in building a new life from scratch, the camaraderie forged through shared struggles, and the hope for a better future all played a part in sustaining these early settlers. As we reflect on this era, it's important to recognize both the resilience of these early colonists and the complex legacy they left behind. Their experiences laid the foundation for the diverse tapestry of cultures and traditions that would eventually form modern nations across the Americas. In the end, the story of colonial settlers is one of human endurance, adaptability, and the relentless pursuit of a better life. It serves as a testament to the strength of the human spirit in the face of overwhelming odds, and a reminder of how far we've come in our quest for comfort and security. As we conclude our exploration of the Aztec warriors' rigorous lifestyle, we shift our focus to another intriguing aspect of ancient civilizations. Our next topic delves into the fascinating world of medieval European castle life. From the towering stone walls to the intricate social hierarchies within, we'll uncover why you might not fare any better as a castle dweller than as an Aztec warrior. In ancient Greece, philosophers were not just thinkers, but also teachers and influencers of their time. One such philosopher, whose name has been lost to history, decided to open a school of thought. He believed that by sharing his ideas, he could shape the minds of future generations. The process of establishing a philosophical school in ancient Greece was not as simple as one might imagine. It required careful planning, gathering of resources, and most importantly, a compelling set of ideas that would attract students and patrons alike. The philosopher began by. As we delve into the daily life of ancient Athenians, we find ourselves transported to a world both familiar and alien. Let's explore the routines and customs that shaped the lives of these ancient Greeks. In Athens, the day typically began at dawn. The early morning light would filter through the narrow streets, rousing citizens from their slumber. Most Athenians lived in modest homes made of sun-dried mud bricks, with tiled roofs to protect against the Mediterranean heat. The first order of business for many was to visit the local fountain house. Here, they would collect fresh water for the day's needs. This task often fell to women and slaves, who would carry heavy clay jugs back to their homes. As the sun climbed higher, the city would come alive with activity. The Agora, Athens' central marketplace, buzzed with merchants setting up their stalls. Here, one could find everything from fresh produce to imported luxuries. For the men of Athens, particularly citizens, the day might involve political duties. The Athenian democracy required active participation, and citizens were expected to attend assemblies and serve on juries. These gatherings took place on the Pnyx, a hill with a commanding view of the city. Women, on the other hand, typically remained at home, overseeing household affairs and engaging in domestic tasks such as weaving and child-rearing. It's worth noting that the role of women in Athenian society was quite restricted compared to modern standards. Education was highly valued in Athens, though formal schooling was primarily reserved for boys from wealthier families. Young Athenian males would study subjects like reading, writing, mathematics, music, and physical education under the tutelage of a pedagogue. As midday approached, many Athenians would pause for a light meal. This might consist of bread, olives, cheese, and perhaps some wine diluted with water. The main meal of the day was typically eaten in the evening. Afternoons in Athens often saw men gathering in public spaces for intellectual discussions or visiting the gymnasium for exercise and socializing. The gymnasium was not just a place for physical training, but also a center for philosophical debate and cultural exchange. As the day wound down, Athenians might attend religious festivals or theatrical performances. The city was known for its elaborate religious ceremonies and its famous dramatic competitions, which drew crowds to the theater of Dionysus on the slopes of the Acropolis. Evenings in Athens were a time for the symposium, a male-only drinking party that combined intellectual discourse with entertainment. These gatherings were central to the social life of upper-class Athenian men. As night fell, the city would gradually quiet down, with most citizens retiring to their homes. The streets, lit only by the moon and occasional oil lamps, would empty, save for the occasional night watchman or reveler making their way home from a symposium. As we delve into the realm of ancient philosophy, let's explore some of the major philosophical schools that shaped human thought throughout history. These schools of thought have influenced our understanding of the world, ethics, and human nature for centuries. First, we have Platonism, founded by the Greek philosopher Plato in the 4th century BCE. Platonists believed in the existence of abstract forms or ideas that exist beyond the physical world. They argued that true knowledge comes from understanding these eternal, unchanging forms rather than relying solely on sensory experiences. Next, we encounter Aristotelianism, developed by Plato's student Aristotle. This school of thought emphasized empirical observation and logical reasoning. Aristotle's works covered a wide range of subjects, including ethics, politics, metaphysics, and natural sciences. His ideas greatly influenced Western philosophy and scientific thought for centuries. Moving on, we have Stoicism, founded by Zeno of Citium in Athens around 300 BCE. Stoics believed in living a life of virtue in accordance with reason and nature. They emphasized the importance of self-control, fortitude, and detachment from external circumstances. Stoicism gained popularity in ancient Rome and continues to influence modern self-help philosophies. Another significant school was Epicureanism, founded by Epicurus around 307 BCE. Epicureans sought to achieve happiness through the pursuit of pleasure, but not in the hedonistic sense. They advocated for simple pleasures, freedom from fear, and the cultivation of friendships as the path to a fulfilling life. In ancient India, we find the school of Buddhism, founded by Siddhartha Gautama, also known as the Buddha, in the 5th century BCE. Buddhism teaches that suffering is an inherent part of life and offers a path to enlightenment through the Four Noble Truths and the Eightfold Path. Confucianism, developed by the Chinese philosopher Confucius in the 6th century BCE, focused on ethics, morality, and social relationships. It emphasized the importance of virtues such as benevolence, righteousness, and filial piety in creating a harmonious society. Later in the medieval period, we encounter scholasticism, which sought to reconcile classical philosophy with Christian theology. Prominent scholastic philosophers like Thomas Aquinas attempted to use reason and logic to understand and defend religious doctrines. These philosophical schools, among many others, have shaped the way humans think about existence, morality, and knowledge throughout history. Their ideas continue to influence modern philosophy, ethics, and various aspects of our daily lives, even if we're not always aware of their impact. As an Aztec warrior, you might think your greatest threats came from the battlefield. However, the political landscape of the Aztec Empire was just as treacherous, if not more so. The intricate web of alliances, rivalries, and power struggles within the Aztec society posed constant dangers to warriors, regardless of their prowess in combat. The Aztec Empire was built on a system of tribute and conquest, with the capital Tenochtitlan at its center. As a warrior, your loyalty was expected to lie with the Tlatani, the ruler of Tenochtitlan. However, this loyalty could be tested by the complex relationships between city-states and noble houses. One misstep in navigating these political waters could lead to dire consequences. For instance, if you were seen associating with members of a rival faction or expressing sympathy for a conquered city-state, you might find yourself accused of treason. The punishment for such offenses was often swift and severe, ranging from demotion and loss of privileges to execution. The Aztec nobility, known as the Pipiltin, held significant influence over warriors' careers. Gaining favor with the right noble could lead to rapid advancement, while falling out of favor could result in being passed over for promotions or even being assigned to dangerous, low-prestige missions. Another political danger came from the practice of human sacrifice. While this was a central part of Aztec religion, it also served political purposes. As a warrior, you might be tasked with capturing enemies for sacrifice. Failure to provide enough captives could be seen as a sign of weakness or lack of dedication, potentially damaging your standing within the military hierarchy. The Aztec calendar played a crucial role in political life as well. Certain days were considered more auspicious for important decisions or military campaigns. A warrior who ignored these beliefs or acted on an inauspicious day might face criticism or even punishment, regardless of the outcome of their actions. Perhaps most dangerously, the Aztec Empire's expansion meant that there were always newly conquered territories and peoples to manage. As a warrior, you might be sent to these areas to maintain order. However, navigating the local politics and potential rebellions while also representing the interests of Tenochtitlan was a delicate balancing act. One wrong move could spark an uprising or lead to accusations of mismanagement from your superiors. In this politically charged environment, even the most skilled warrior had to be constantly vigilant. Your words, actions, and associations were always under scrutiny. The ability to navigate these complex political waters was often just as important for survival and success as your prowess on the battlefield. As we delve deeper into the life of an Aztec warrior, we must consider the social expectations placed upon these esteemed members of society. The Aztec culture was deeply rooted in a complex system of beliefs and traditions, which significantly influenced the daily lives and behaviors of its warriors. Aztec warriors were not just fighters, they were representatives of their society's values and ideals. From a young age, male children were taught the importance of bravery, discipline, and sacrifice. These virtues were not merely encouraged, but expected to be embodied by every warrior throughout their life. One of the most significant social expectations for Aztec warriors was their participation in religious ceremonies. The Aztec religion was intrinsically linked to warfare, and warriors played a crucial role in many rituals. They were often required to offer their own blood in bloodletting ceremonies, a practice believed to nourish the gods and maintain cosmic balance. The concept of sacrifice extended beyond personal bloodletting. Aztec warriors were expected to capture enemies during battle for later sacrifice. This was not just a military tactic, but a religious and social obligation. The number of captives a warrior brought back directly impacted their social status and advancement opportunities. In addition to their religious duties, Aztec warriors were expected to maintain a strict code of conduct in their personal lives. Sobriety was highly valued, and warriors were generally prohibited from consuming alcohol except during specific religious festivals. This abstinence was seen as a demonstration of self-control and dedication to their calling. Marriage and family life were also subject to social expectations. While warriors were encouraged to marry and have children, they were expected to prioritize their military duties above all else. Extended periods away from home for training or campaigns were common, and warriors were expected to accept this as part of their service to the state and the gods. The warrior's appearance was another aspect heavily influenced by social expectations. Elaborate hairstyles, body paint, and jewelry were not just for aesthetics, but served as indicators of rank and accomplishment. Warriors were expected to maintain these outward symbols of their status meticulously. Perhaps one of the most challenging social expectations was the constant pressure to prove oneself in battle. Aztec society valued martial prowess above almost all else, and warriors were under continuous scrutiny. Failure or cowardice in battle could result not only in personal shame, but also in severe consequences for one's family and social standing. These social expectations created a life of constant vigilance and dedication for Aztec warriors. Every aspect of their existence was shaped by the demands of their role, leaving little room for personal desires or individual expression outside the prescribed norms of their society. As we conclude our exploration of ancient Greek philosophers, it's important to reflect on the lasting impact these thinkers have had on Western civilization and beyond. Their pursuit of wisdom and understanding laid the foundation for many of the philosophical and scientific principles we still grapple with today. Socrates, with his method of questioning and critical thinking, challenged the status quo and encouraged his students to examine their own beliefs. His approach to seeking truth through dialogue continues to influence educational practices and intellectual discourse. Plato, Socrates' most famous student, expanded on his teacher's ideas and developed his own theories of forms and ideal governance. His writings, particularly The Republic, have shaped political thought for centuries and continue to be studied in universities worldwide. Aristotle, often regarded as the father of Western philosophy, made significant contributions to logic, metaphysics, ethics, and natural sciences. His systematic approach to knowledge and his emphasis on empirical observation laid the groundwork for scientific inquiry. The Stoics, such as Zeno, Epictetus, and Marcus Aurelius, offered practical wisdom for dealing with life's challenges. Their teachings on self-control, resilience, and acceptance of what is beyond our control continue to resonate with modern audiences seeking guidance in turbulent times. Epicurus, often misunderstood, promoted a philosophy of simple pleasures and freedom from fear. His ideas about atoms and the nature of the universe were remarkably prescient, foreshadowing some aspects of modern physics. These philosophers, along with many others we haven't had time to discuss, have left an indelible mark on human thought. Their ideas have been debated, refined, and reinterpreted over millennia, shaping the way we understand ourselves and the world around us. As we drift off to sleep, let us appreciate the enduring legacy of these ancient thinkers. Their quest for knowledge and understanding continues to inspire generations of scholars, thinkers, and everyday individuals seeking to make sense of the human experience and our place in the cosmos. As we conclude our exploration of the Aztec warriors' rigorous life, we shift our gaze to another ancient civilization known for its military prowess. Our next topic delves into the world of Spartan warriors, whose legendary discipline and combat skills have captivated historians for centuries. Let's uncover why surviving as a Spartan soldier would be equally challenging, if not more so, than life as an Aztec warrior. As we drift through the annals of history, let's journey to the frozen expanses of Antarctica. Picture yourself as an early 20th century explorer, braving the harshest conditions on Earth. The biting wind howls across endless fields of ice and snow, while towering glaciers loom in the distance. Your thick furs barely keep out the bone-chilling cold as you trudge forward, each step a battle against nature itself. The isolation is complete, no living soul for thousands of miles. Your mission: to map the unknown, to push the boundaries of human endurance, and to claim a piece of this vast, unforgiving continent for your country. In the annals of human endurance, few challenges rival the harsh realities of extreme cold survival. Throughout history, individuals have faced the unforgiving embrace of frigid environments, testing the limits of human resilience and ingenuity. One of the most critical aspects of surviving extreme cold is maintaining core body temperature. The human body operates optimally at around 37 degrees Celsius or 98.6 degrees Fahrenheit. When exposed to severe cold, the body redirects blood flow from the extremities to vital organs, a process known as vasoconstriction. This biological response, while protective, can lead to frostbite in fingers, toes, ears, and nose if prolonged exposure occurs. Historically, many explorers and adventurers learned this lesson the hard way, often returning from expeditions with missing digits or severe tissue damage. Proper insulation is paramount in cold weather survival. The Inuit people of the Arctic regions developed highly effective clothing made from animal skins and furs. These garments, often consisting of multiple layers, trap warm air close to the body and provide excellent protection against wind and moisture. Shelter construction is another crucial skill in extreme cold environments. The iconic igloo, developed by indigenous peoples of the Arctic, is a prime example of ingenious cold weather shelter. Despite being made of snow and ice, the igloo's dome shape and compact design allow it to retain heat surprisingly well. Food and hydration play vital roles in cold weather survival. The body requires more calories to maintain warmth in frigid conditions. High-fat foods are particularly valuable, as they provide concentrated energy sources. Interestingly, many traditional Arctic diets are rich in animal fats, demonstrating the adaptation of diet to environmental conditions. Dehydration is a silent threat in cold environments. Cold air is typically very dry, and the body loses moisture through respiration and perspiration, even in freezing temperatures. Snow and ice must be melted and purified before consumption to avoid further lowering body temperature. Mental preparedness is equally important in extreme cold survival. The psychological stress of isolation, constant discomfort, and the ever-present threat of hypothermia can be overwhelming. Many survival accounts emphasize the importance of maintaining a positive mindset and having a strong will to live. Throughout history, numerous expeditions have faced the challenges of extreme cold. The ill-fated Franklin expedition of 1845, searching for the Northwest Passage, ended in tragedy with all 129 crew members perishing in the Arctic. Conversely, Ernest Shackleton's Endurance expedition of 1914-1917, despite being stranded in Antarctica, saw all crew members survive thanks to exceptional leadership and survival skills. As we conclude this segment on extreme cold survival, it's clear that human ingenuity, preparation, and adaptability have been key to overcoming some of nature's most formidable challenges. The lessons learned from these historical encounters continue to inform modern survival techniques and cold weather gear design. Aztec warriors embarked on their expeditions with a carefully curated set of equipment, each item serving a specific purpose in their military campaigns. Let's delve into the essential gear that these formidable fighters carried with them into battle. First and foremost, the Aztec warriors' primary weapon was the macuahuitl, a fearsome wooden club embedded with obsidian blades. This weapon was both versatile and deadly, capable of inflicting severe wounds on opponents. The macuahuitl came in various sizes, with some warriors wielding two-handed versions for maximum impact. Complementing the macuahuitl was the atlatl, a spear thrower that allowed warriors to launch darts with incredible force and accuracy. This weapon extended the range of Aztec fighters, making them formidable opponents even at a distance. The atlatl darts were often tipped with obsidian or copper points, enhancing their penetrating power. For defense, Aztec warriors relied on their ikkahu pili, a thickly quilted cotton armor that provided surprising protection against enemy strikes. This lightweight yet effective armor allowed for greater mobility compared to the heavy metal armor of their Spanish adversaries. Some higher-ranking warriors also wore wooden helmets adorned with feathers, adding both protection and intimidation to their appearance. Another crucial piece of equipment was the chimeli, a round shield typically made of wood and covered with leather. These shields were often decorated with intricate designs and featherwork, serving both a practical and ceremonial purpose. The chimeli provided essential protection against enemy projectiles in close-quarter combat. Aztec warriors also carried a variety of smaller weapons and tools. These included tepestapili, a type of wooden spear with an obsidian-edged head, and tecpatl, an obsidian knife used for close combat and ritualistic purposes. Some warriors also carried boluses, weighted cords used to entangle enemies or bring down fleeing opponents. In addition to weapons, Aztec warriors brought practical items for their campaigns. They carried lightweight provisions, typically consisting of dried corn, beans, and chia seeds, which could sustain them for several days. Water was stored in gourds, ensuring hydration during long marches. For navigation and signaling, warriors used conch shell trumpets called aitkakali. These instruments could produce loud, piercing sounds that carried over long distances, allowing for communication between different units during battle or on the march. Lastly, Aztec warriors often carried small religious icons or amulets for spiritual protection. These might include representations of patron deities or symbols associated with their particular warrior society. Such items provided psychological comfort and reinforced the warriors' belief in their divine mission. This carefully selected array of equipment allowed Aztec warriors to be formidable and adaptable fighters, capable of engaging in various forms of combat and surviving extended campaigns away from home. Their gear reflected a balance of practical military needs and the rich cultural and religious traditions of Aztec society. As we delve deeper into the life of an Aztec warrior, we must consider the nutritional challenges they faced. The Aztec diet, while diverse, presented its own set of difficulties that would make modern stomachs churn. Aztec warriors primarily subsisted on a diet of maize, beans, and squash, known as the Three Sisters. While these staples provided essential nutrients, they lacked certain amino acids and vitamins crucial for maintaining peak physical condition. To compensate, warriors had to supplement their diet with other sources of protein and nutrients. One such source was spirulina, a type of blue-green algae harvested from Lake Texcoco. This nutrient-dense food was dried into cakes and consumed regularly. While spirulina is now touted as a superfood, imagine having to rely on algae cakes as a primary source of protein. The taste and texture would likely be far from appealing to our modern palates. Another important yet unsettling aspect of the Aztec warriors' diet was the consumption of insects. Grasshoppers, ants, and even stink bugs were commonly eaten for their protein content. These crunchy critters were often ground into a paste or roasted whole. While entomophagy or insect eating is gaining traction in some parts of the world today, it remains a concept that many find difficult to stomach. Perhaps the most challenging aspect of Aztec nutrition for modern individuals would be the scarcity of meat. While the warriors did consume meat, it was not as readily available as it is in many diets today. The primary sources of animal protein were turkeys, dogs specially raised for food, and game animals hunted in the wild. The concept of eating dog meat would be particularly distressing for many people in contemporary society. Water quality was another significant issue. The Aztecs had sophisticated water management systems, but by modern standards, the water would likely be considered unsafe for consumption. Warriors often drank pulque, a fermented beverage made from agave sap which provided both hydration and calories. However, the sour, yeasty taste of pulque might be off-putting to those accustomed to clean, filtered water or flavored beverages. Lastly, we must consider the issue of food preservation. Without modern refrigeration techniques, the Aztecs relied heavily on methods like sun-drying and salt preservation. This meant that much of their food, especially meat, was often consumed in a state that we might consider past its prime. The constant risk of foodborne illnesses would have been a daily concern for Aztec warriors. In conclusion, the nutritional challenges faced by Aztec warriors were numerous and varied. From relying on algae and insects for protein to consuming fermented beverages and potentially spoiled foods, their diet would be a significant hurdle for most modern individuals to overcome. These dietary practices, while necessary for survival in their time, serve as a stark reminder of the vast differences between ancient and contemporary lifestyles. As we delve deeper into the psychological challenges faced by Aztec warriors, we encounter a particularly daunting aspect of their experience: psychological isolation. This isolation wasn't just a byproduct of their lifestyle, it was an intentional and integral part of their training and societal role. Aztec warriors were expected to maintain a level of detachment from civilian life that would be considered extreme by modern standards. From a young age, potential warriors were separated from their families and placed in military academies known as tulpachkali. This early separation served to break familial bonds and foster a sense of loyalty to the military order above all else. As they progressed in their training and rank, warriors were further isolated from normal society. They lived in separate quarters, ate different foods, and were subject to strict codes of conduct that set them apart from civilians. This isolation was not just physical but also spiritual and emotional. The Aztec belief system played a significant role in this psychological isolation. Warriors were taught that they had a sacred duty to capture enemies for sacrifice, and that their own deaths in battle would lead to a glorious afterlife. This worldview, while motivating, also served to distance them from the concerns and values of everyday Aztec citizens. The psychological toll of this isolation was immense. Warriors were expected to suppress normal human emotions and reactions, particularly in the face of violence and death. They were trained to view the battlefield not as a place of horror, but as a sacred space where they could fulfill their destiny and honor the gods. This mindset, while effective for creating fearsome warriors, came at a great personal cost. Many warriors struggled with the weight of their actions and the constant expectation of violence. The inability to process these experiences in a healthy way often led to what we might now recognize as post-traumatic stress disorder. Moreover, the isolation didn't end when a warrior returned home. Their elevated status in society, combined with their unique experiences, made it difficult for them to relate to non-warriors. This created a perpetual cycle of isolation, even when they were physically present in their communities. In essence, to be an Aztec warrior meant accepting a life of psychological solitude. It required not just physical strength and combat skills, but also the mental fortitude to withstand prolonged periods of emotional and social deprivation. This aspect of warrior life would be particularly challenging for modern individuals accustomed to constant social connection and emotional support. As we conclude our journey through the harsh realities of Antarctic exploration, it's clear that surviving in this frozen wilderness was a monumental challenge. The early 20th century, explorers faced obstacles that would break even the hardiest of modern adventurers. The constant battle against extreme cold, with temperatures plummeting to minus 60 degrees C or lower, meant that frostbite and hypothermia were ever-present dangers. Every moment outside required careful preparation and layers upon layers of inadequate clothing by today's standards. Food scarcity was another relentless enemy. The limited preserved rations quickly became unappetizing, and malnutrition was a constant threat. Explorers often had to resort to eating their sled dogs or hunting seals and penguins when supplies ran low, leading to difficult ethical and practical decisions. The psychological toll of isolation in the vast white expanse cannot be overstated. Months of darkness during the polar winter, combined with the constant howling of wind and the eerie silence of the landscape, pushed many to the brink of madness. Navigation posed its own set of challenges. Without modern GPS technology, explorers relied on sextants and compasses, which could be affected by the proximity to the magnetic pole. A simple miscalculation could mean the difference between reaching a supply cache or perishing in the endless ice fields. The physical demands of hauling heavy sleds across treacherous terrain for hours each day, often in whiteout conditions, would exhaust even the fittest individuals. Crevasses hidden beneath the snow posed a constant threat of injury or death. Medical emergencies were particularly daunting. With no possibility of evacuation or outside help, explorers had to deal with injuries, illnesses, and even surgeries with limited supplies and expertise. In retrospect, the achievements of these early Antarctic explorers seem almost superhuman. Their resilience, determination, and willingness to push the boundaries of human endurance have left an indelible mark on history. While modern technology has made Antarctic exploration somewhat safer, the continent remains one of the most challenging environments on Earth, demanding respect from all who venture there. As we conclude our exploration of Aztec warriors, let's transition to another fascinating historical topic. In the grand tapestry of human history, countless stories await our discovery. From ancient civilizations to modern marvels, each era offers unique insights into the human experience. Our next subject takes us to a different time and place, where we'll uncover more intriguing details about the past. We drift through the cosmos. Our next historical journey takes us to the realm of space exploration. Picture yourself as a pioneering astronaut, floating in the vastness of space, far from the comforts of Earth. The challenges faced by early space explorers were immense, from the physical toll of zero gravity to the psychological strain of isolation. Let's delve into why you might not last long as a space pioneer, and how these brave individuals paved the way for our understanding of the universe. As we drift through the cosmos of sleep, let's explore the rigorous world of astronaut training. The journey to become a space explorer is far from a walk in the park, or should we say, a float in zero gravity. Astronaut candidates undergo a grueling selection process that whittles down thousands of applicants to just a handful of individuals. The basic requirements alone are enough to disqualify most. A bachelor's degree in engineering, biological science, physical science, or mathematics, plus at least 3 years of professional experience, or a minimum of 1,000 hours of pilot and command time in jet aircraft. Once selected, candidates embark on a 2-year basic training program. This includes learning the ins and outs of international space station systems, extravehicular activity skills, robotics, aircraft operations, and the Russian language. Yes, you heard that correctly. Astronauts must learn Russian to communicate effectively with their counterparts from other space agencies. Physical preparation is equally demanding. Candidates must pass a swimming test and become scuba qualified to prepare for underwater spacewalk training. They also undergo extensive physical fitness regimens to prepare their bodies for the rigors of space travel. One of the most challenging aspects of training is learning to work in a microgravity environment. To simulate weightlessness, astronauts practice in the Neutral Buoyancy Laboratory, a massive pool containing full-scale mock-ups of space station modules. Here, they spend hours underwater, learning to maneuver in bulky spacesuits and perform complex tasks. Aspiring astronauts must also become accustomed to the intense G-forces experienced during launch and re-entry. This is accomplished through sessions in a centrifuge, a large arm that spins at high speeds, subjecting trainees to forces up to 3G, 3 times the normal force of gravity on Earth. Survival skills are another crucial component of training. Astronauts learn to survive in various environments, from scorching deserts to frigid waters, preparing for the possibility of an off-course landing during their return to Earth. The mental challenges are equally formidable. Astronauts must develop excellent problem-solving skills and the ability to remain calm under extreme pressure. They undergo countless simulations of emergency scenarios, from equipment failures to medical emergencies in space. Even after completing basic training, astronauts continue to learn and train throughout their careers. They must stay current on the latest space technologies, scientific experiments, and mission protocols. The journey of an astronaut is one of lifelong learning and adaptation. As we ponder the dedication required to become an astronaut, perhaps we can appreciate the comfort of our own beds a little more. After all, while we dream of the stars, we don't have to worry about docking a spacecraft or conducting a spacewalk in our sleep. As we drift through the cosmos of our imagination, let's ground ourselves in the sobering reality of space travel. While science fiction often portrays interstellar journeys as glamorous adventures, the truth is far less exciting and considerably more challenging. First, let's consider the sheer vastness of space. The nearest star system to Earth, Alpha Centauri, is about 4.37 light-years away. Using our current fastest spacecraft, it would take approximately 73,000 years to reach it. That's longer than the entirety of recorded human history. Space travel also poses significant health risks to astronauts. Extended periods in zero gravity can lead to muscle atrophy, bone density loss, and vision problems. The human body, evolved for life on Earth, struggles to adapt to the harsh environment of space. Radiation exposure is another major concern. Beyond Earth's protective magnetosphere, astronauts are exposed to high levels of cosmic radiation, increasing their risk of cancer and other health issues. Shielding technology exists, but it's heavy and impractical for long-distance travel. The psychological toll of space travel is often overlooked. Astronauts must cope with extreme isolation, confinement, and the stress of knowing that a small mistake could be fatal. The longest continuous time spent in space is 437 days, achieved by Russian cosmonaut Valery Polyakov. Imagine being confined to a small space for over a year, with no ability to return home quickly if needed. Then there's the logistical nightmare of supplying a long-term space mission. Every gram of food, water, and oxygen must be meticulously calculated and stored. Recycling systems are crucial but far from perfect. The International Space Station, for instance, recycles about 93% of its water, but still requires regular resupply missions. The financial cost of space travel is astronomical. The Apollo program, which landed humans on the moon, cost about $25.4 billion in 1960s dollars, equivalent to over $150 billion today. And that was just to reach our nearest celestial neighbor. Even if we overcome these obstacles, there's the question of what we'd find. Most planets we've discovered are inhospitable gas giants or rocky worlds with extreme temperatures and toxic atmospheres. The romantic notion of finding Earth-like worlds teeming with life remains, for now, in the realm of science fiction. So while we continue to push the boundaries of space exploration, the reality of space travel remains far removed from our sci-fi fantasies. It's a testament to human ingenuity that we've achieved what we have, but also a humbling reminder of the immense challenges that lie ahead in our quest to reach for the stars. Living on a space station might sound exciting, but the reality is far more mundane and challenging than you might imagine. Let's explore the daily life of astronauts aboard the International Space Station, or ISS, and why you probably wouldn't last long in this environment. First, let's talk about personal hygiene. In zero gravity, even the simplest tasks become complicated. Brushing your teeth, for instance, requires a special toothpaste that can be swallowed, as spitting is not an option. Astronauts use a small amount of water to wet their toothbrush, then swallow the toothpaste when they're done. Taking a shower is out of the question. Instead, astronauts use wet wipes and a rinseless shampoo to clean themselves. They have to be careful not to let water droplets float away, as these could damage sensitive equipment. Imagine trying to stay clean and fresh when you can't even take a proper shower for months on end. Using the bathroom is another challenge altogether. The toilet on the ISS uses suction to collect waste, and astronauts have to carefully align themselves to avoid making a mess. Urine is collected separately and recycled into drinking water. Yes, you heard that right, astronauts drink their own purified urine. Sleep is also a unique experience in space. Astronauts float in sleeping bags attached to the walls of their small crew quarters. They have to strap themselves in to avoid drifting around the station while they sleep. The constant noise from equipment and the lack of natural day-night cycles can make it difficult to get restful sleep. Exercise is crucial in space to prevent muscle and bone loss. Astronauts spend about 2 hours each day working out on specialized equipment. This isn't just for health, it's a necessity to ensure they can function when they return to Earth's gravity. Meals in space are far from gourmet experiences. Most food is dehydrated or comes in pouches that need to be rehydrated with hot water. Crumbs can be dangerous in zero gravity, so bread is rarely eaten. Instead, tortillas are a staple. Astronauts often complain about the lack of flavor in space food, as the absence of gravity affects their sense of taste. The workday on the ISS is long and rigorous. Astronauts typically work 12 to 16 hours a day, conducting scientific experiments, maintaining equipment, and dealing with the constant challenges of living in space. There's very little downtime, and the pressure to perform is immense. So while the view from the ISS might be spectacular, the day-to-day reality of space station living is far from glamorous. It requires immense physical and mental fortitude, adaptability, and a willingness to give up many of the comforts we take for granted on Earth. The next time you dream of being an astronaut, remember, space living is not for the faint of heart. As we conclude our journey through these historical landscapes, we find ourselves returning to the present day. The echoes of ancient civilizations and bygone eras fade into the background, leaving us with a renewed appreciation for the comforts and conveniences of modern life. From the brutal training of Aztec warriors to the harsh realities of medieval peasant life, we've explored the challenges that our ancestors faced daily. These glimpses into the past serve as a reminder of how far human society has progressed. As you drift off to sleep, consider how fortunate we are to live in an age where clean water, abundant food, and advanced medical care are readily available to many. The struggles of those who came before us have paved the way for the world we inhabit today. Thank you for joining us on this historical journey. May your dreams be peaceful, free from the worries of ancient times. Good night and sleep well.